Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing iRacing GT3 Championship Season 2. We are in the pre-season, and tonight marks the second of the 3 test events in the build-up to the official season, which kicks off in only 2 weeks' time. Today marks the 3rd of November, of course, and 2 weeks now, on what is the 17th of November, we'll be getting underway with the official season. But before we do, we have these test events in order to get our drivers prepped for the season ahead, give them a bit of racing experience amongst one another, but most importantly, give them the opportunity to work out which car they plan to take to the championship, because the car choice could be the difference between a driver doing well and struggling throughout the season if the car is not to their liking. And today's pre-season test event is at none other than the Nurburgring 24-hour circuit. That's right, you've heard it. We are at the longest possible circuit in the available calendar, coming in at a total of 178 corners, 15.77 miles of circuit, or 25.38 kilometres of circuit. This German circuit being known for its challenging corners, undulations, camber changes, elevation changes, you name it. And our drivers tonight will be testing themselves out at this circuit over the course of a schedule which consists of follows. A 30-minute qualifying session in just under 13 minutes time, so we'll be getting underway at what is 19:30. That shouldn't say British Summer Time there, that is GMT rather than British Summer Time, because we have recently made the transition back to GMT or Greenwich Mean Time and just standard UTC. So it'll be at 7:30 this evening at British time, and then after the 30-minute qualifying session is complete, we'll be getting underway with the feature race, which will be a single 2-hour endurance race, much like our 2-hour endurance races that we saw in round 6 and the season finale round 12 of season 1. We are going to be using that format tonight to provide a different flavour of race, but also to accommodate the fact we are at the absolutely huge circuit, the Gesamtstrecke variant of the Nurburgring, the 24-hour variant. Now, in the commentary box tonight is myself and also Matt Emmons, who very shortly, I think, will be able to introduce. If you want to say hello, Matt.
Hello.
So Matt Emmons is joining me in the commentary box tonight and will be very shortly getting into his car, I believe, in order to give us a quick tour of the Nürburgring circuit. I say quick tour, but then again, it's about a 9-minute tour if I remember correctly, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the drivers have been in the chat have been saying they've been doing nearly 8 minute 20 seconds, but I think of the test I've done, because I've never driven this up until this week, I think it was at 8:50 I did. So yeah, it's a bit long and difficult and challenging, and the fact that you can't remember half the track.
Oh, indeed. I mean, having driven around this circuit, not on iRacing, but on GT Sport, I know it took me the best part of 2 to 3 weeks just to learn all the corners. I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but I'll do my best to try and remember some, and I'm sure you'll correct me when I just completely forget some or get some wrong. But in terms of the car that you're going to be picking tonight, Matt, are you going to give it away now or wait until we jump on board with you?
Well, I've decided to stick with the BMW for tonight. I'm going to do a bit more testing over the weekend, and you'll all find out next weekend which car I'm going to be for the season.
Oh, we look forward to seeing that. But before we get to the Tour lap in the BMW M4, it's time for a word from our sponsor. And of course, this series being brought to you in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy. So without further ado, let's say hello to our sponsor. So you may be asking me at this point, who are Apex Racing Academy? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They're dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. And in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synced directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Why not check them out today and sign up today at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. And of course, we're very grateful to have Apex Racing Academy with us. They did provide us with a good number of the setups and also a sizable portion of the prize pool for Season 1. And to have them back supporting us in Season 2 is a dream come true. And we're very grateful to have the ARA guys, the Apex Racing AC guys, with us. But without further ado, let's very briefly introduce our circuit. We are in the Nürburgring region of Germany today for the Nurburgring 24-hour Gesamtstrecke circuit. And as you can see from the diagram here provided by the simracingwiki.com website, we have a grand total of what is in the region of 178 corners. Starting off, of course, with the original Nürburgring World Endurance circuit, albeit we have less than the Mercedes Arena. And once we've completed our 13 corners of the Nürburgring GP or World Endurance circuit, we move on to the Nordschleife loop. And that loop, you can see all the different corners here. I can go through them all, but otherwise I'd rather instead hand over to our driver, who's going to be taking us around the circuit live very shortly. So without further ado, as we do move away all the detail on screen, Matt, are you good to go and take us out for a tour of the circuit?
I'll try my best.
Alrighty, so we're right on board with you right now. So, I don't know if you want to give us an initial tour before we get up into the Nordschleife loop, because I know you'll need to concentrate at that point.
Yeah, so you probably all, if you've seen last season, remember this opening bit from the GP round, other than this little hairpin that's a bit different that I think will catch a few drivers out tonight, as it did with me in testing. But this opening bit, everyone knows the Nürburgring Grand Prix layout, and it's really easy to remember, and it's like Paul was saying, it's getting onto the Nordschleife section as I run wide a bit on that corner then, that it all gets a bit tricky, shall we say.
Oh, indeed it does. And as you're making your way down to the second of the hairpin corners on the GP loop, how much time and practice do you have to put in just to memorise this layout?
The Nordschleife itself, I'll be honest, I've done about 2 hours of practice and I've still not learnt it fully anyway.
Well, as you're now halfway through the World Endurance of the GP part of the circuit, coming up into what would be normally known as turn 11 if we had the full Mercedes Arena, and heading into 12 now. Getting that build up ready. Are the nerves tingling right now? A little bit of nervousness coming in?
Yeah, considering I don't know how many people are watching and I don't really want to embarrass myself, to be honest.
Well, without further ado, what we'll do, we'll let you concentrate as you make your way through the Vidal chicane, and we'll take our drivers around for the tour, also our viewers around for the tour of what is the Nordschleife loop. So, coming to the end of the GP loop, going into turn 13, we bank left here and go past the original pit entry and exit section before making our way into the Sabine Schmidt curve. Coming through that left hand there, coming all the way down to second or first gear, depending on kart, we now make our way through the long extended right hand sequence here of a series of corners as we get a slight camera glitch there, but that has been fixed. And as we now flip to the left handers here, we've got the heavy braking zone coming up here in the build up towards the long run all the way up to what is a wonderful set of corners that are known as we just get the name available to us, known as the Hoheiken section, and he makes his way through into Hoheiken now. It's the right into left here before starting to make his way down towards Flugplatz. Coming out this left-hander, completely flat on the throttle now, and it's the long run up towards Flugplatz corner. Now we will see drivers trying to go through Flugplatz as rapidly as possible as he makes his way over the crest of the hill. But he lifts off the throttle here to stop the car from wobbling as he goes over the hill, fully committed in fact, but lifts into Flugplatz there, and you can see just letting the car settle before now going on the very long journey all the way up towards Arenberg corner. Perhaps one of the most infamous corners at this circuit for the fact it's a very technically challenging corner because you have this long run followed by a left-hander before Arenberg where you've got to lift off the throttle and drop one gear sometimes, coming down from 6th to 5th maybe in this case of the M4. And as he makes his way up into Arenberg, the right hand now coming all the way down the gearbox here to what is 3rd or 2nd gear depending on car. I think 2nd gear there, and going a bit high on the curb there just to push the car through. Now you've got the long run down into what is known as Postbrücke, followed by Fußfahrer, and then the compression. This is a flat out section going downhill and into left-hander, and another left-hander is about to come about where we start to go uphill into the compression now. Nasty corner here with an apex curve that is a blind summit before making his way into what is known as Aldenauer Forest, and as he makes his way into left into right combination here, Matt going a little bit deep, but I'm probably putting him off talking in his ear whilst we are watching him drive.
No, that corner always catches me out, I don't know why.
But a very tricky set of corners there, so he has to let a little bit of traffic through. Another BMW M4. BMW drivers being polite to one another, and as he makes his way up into the double left-hand sequence here, another tricky section of corners with raised apex curves, which will bounce the car if he clips them too hard with the aerodynamics and the left-hand wheels. But now making his way into the double right-hand sequence, which culminates in Calenard, a wonderful downhill right-hander here, where you feel the car just simply go away from you. You have to put very little effort on the throttle. It's all about apex before making his way now down the left into right sequence. This being known as the Adrefat Rex, as he makes his way into the extended right-hander, which is essentially a very late apex, but you don't see the apex. You have to line the car up for it before now coming into the very heavy braking zone here, coming all the way down to first gear, and these corners being known as what is Rexside, as he now makes his way out of there and heads, or not, that's Versiphon and not Vexside. Vexside is now coming up, which is the run over the bridge style sequence here into the left-hander before going into the right-hander here as he makes his way up the hill. A very close-ended right-hander in second gear of what is the run out of Extal into Lauder Links, the Lauder Links being the left-hander here that you can see coming up before making his way into Bergwerk. Now coming through Lauder Links at this point, Lauder Links being flat out into Bergwerk here, and a very tricky corner, but when you get it right, this gives you the highest possible exit speed you can in the run all the way up to the carousel. But they're going a little too high on the apex curve, but doing very well to collect the car on the exit of Bergwerk and on that raised exit curve to be able to go flat out now in the long run up the hill. But I think he may have some traffic coming up behind him. Yep, he does, in the form of an MP4 12C McLaren. And now it's the case that Matt, how are you feeling so far after completing half the lap?
I think I might break a sweat in a minute.
Well, now making your way up towards carousel.
Yeah, as you can see, it's just there's a few corners that are so blind you completely forget whereabouts to brake, and that's where I've been going wrong.
Indeed, it is a very challenging circuit, this one. I always normally forget to brake for carousel up here. I normally end up braking way too late and attacking the apex, this right-hander, too aggressively. But now coming up into carousel curve here, and well, it's going to be before that, of course, the long right-hander of which precedes carousel. And that long right-hander, for those of you who are the aficionados, we'll call it as the Style Strecker. And as he now makes him out, he goes into the official Caracola carousel and keeping it very nice and tight. Ooh, steady on. And that's a bit of a mangled front end. That's no problem at all.
Well, it would be if my steering wheel weren't playing about now.
Well, that is not good news.
Oh, I can finish.
Alrighty, so making your way there through the left into right sequence and all the way up into what's Whole Hat Corner. Starting the downhill descent, really, the final third of the course, which is perhaps, some would argue, the more challenging side. Some would argue it's the easier side.
I prefer it. I think it's the easier bit. Just for that long straight, to be honest.
Oh, the Dottinger straight right at the end. Now coming into what is the first of the two right-handers. That one there being, in fact, that's the second of the two right-handers, my apologies, known as YouTube Corner by some. It's given a nickname because that's normally where you see a lot of accidents on YouTube, as we're not going to be having any major accidents of YouTube-worthy note here. As we can see, Matt now starting to make his way down through Flansgarten. Flansgarten 1 will be the formation here with the dip, and then Flansgarten 2 begins as soon as he's cleared the left-hander that's coming up here, the blind summit left-hander, where he's got to go over a hill to see an apex. Now into Flansgarten 2, which is the absolute lovely flowing sequence of corners here, which when you get it right, you can attack this near close to flat out. Of course, Matt here being very sensitive on the throttle with the damage he's got on the car, and now coming into the final complex of corners before the Dottinger straight. Start off with the long right-hander here, and just nursing this car home right now, going through the Stefan Ballard corner before heading up into Schwabenschwanz.
And there we go, and I've ruined it.
Ah, never mind. Well, you made it, well, we could say about 85% of the way.
Yeah, something like that, but as you can all see, it is such a demanding and challenging track. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I'm missing it this week, to be honest.
But still, it was very good to ride on board with you there, and do apologise for the fact you're probably not used to having me yammering in your left ear as you're driving.
No, I enjoyed it, to be honest. It was quite, because you were, even though you were in my ear, so to speak, you were telling me the corners before I was coming, so I was like, I know I can go a bit faster now, and that's where I've been going wrong, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Might have to try this in an actual race.
Well, I was... Well, it may be the case that, well, we can see Katie saying in the Facebook chat there, she says, hello, also, it's not bumper cars, Emmons.
Yes, I know.
And we've also... And we've also got Elwyn Sykes there in the YouTube chat saying, good evening, gents, good luck, and we'll see you out on track next week. 24-hour variant was too intimidating for my first go. Well, it does look as though Elwyn's not able to brave the circuit, unlike yourself, for just a single lap, if that.
Yeah, I thought I at least had to have a go on stream. If it went all right, I might have continued a bit, but no, it's just not for me, the track. It's too long, it's too twisty.
Oh, well, I'm with you on that one. I'll be honest with you. I'll put my hand up now and say if you asked me to race here as part of a pre-season test event, I'd probably come on just for the qualifying session or for the practice. But then as soon as the race comes on, I'd probably scamper back off to the comfort of the commentary box because it's not my kind of circuit, I'm afraid. Whilst there are some sections I love, it's not quite for me because it's not the length, oddly enough. It's the blind summit style corners. That's what I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, and it's just, you don't realise watching it, I don't know if people saw on the stream, but how bumpy the layout is, and with us all having force feedback steering wheels, you feel every little bump, and it's so unsettling when you're on the brakes and into corners.
Oh, definitely. And in fact, whilst we're waiting to transition over to qualifying, if you don't mind explain a little bit that, what's going through in terms of the motions then when you feel that through the steering wheel, that force feedback? Because I can give an overview from a GT Sport perspective, which is that you get a degree of force feedback there, but what is it like on iRacing when you hit that bump or you hit a curve a bit too hard?
Well, if you're on board with someone and you can watch the steering wheel, every little time it twists, it is quite a bit of force behind it, so you're physically having to fight with it constantly. I mean, I never played GT Sport, so I can't compare it, but on iRacing it really does make you have to correct yourself, so to speak. It sometimes it can be really unsettling, but like I can't remember the long straight name at this track, the back straight. Even though you're in a straight line, you have to keep two hands on the steering wheel because it is constantly wanting to throw you off the track.
Understand me. You've essentially got to keep that grip and keep forcing the car to point in the right direction, effectively.
Yes, you're correct, yes.
Oh, indeed, that does sound very nasty. I mean, I would really look forward to actually driving around here one day on iRacing myself. Hopefully sometime next year I might be able to make a brief guest appearance on the circuit. You never know.
Well, we'll swap jobs. I'll come in this nice, comfy and warm comms box, and you can win these freezing cold cars.
But speaking of going out there in the freezing cold cars, everybody's now into the 30-minute qualifying session. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we are on the outlaps right now, and the outlaps will amount to the opening 9 minutes to 10 minutes of the session, depending on how our drivers place themselves here. So in your opinion, Matt, in the qualifying session, what would you be looking for here? Would you be looking to go out late, go out early, go out in the midst of the pack? Because it's a long outlap here, and you've got to try and find yourself some space, surely.
Yes, but at the same time, you want to try and get a toe for the long straights. I would say go in the middle, but at the same time, you don't want to get caught behind, like, for example, a slower driver or a bit of an incident with someone. Personally, I'd probably try and go as last as possible, and then build about maybe a 5 or 6 second gap, possibly. It'd be one of them. It's just you've got to go out there and just risk it, so to speak, because with the length of the lap and us having a completely different style of race tonight with a 30-minute qualifying, you don't want to go out and ruin it on one lap, because you've not just lost one lap, you've lost two, so to speak.
Yes, I see what you mean, because essentially it's multiplied in terms of that effect when you get it wrong on one lap and you do lose that too. And, well, when you've only got 30 minutes, that's effectively 2 qualifying laps at most, isn't it?
It is. It's something like, I mean, I think it might be 3 at a push, because there's normally the added on time for people to finish the lap. It all depends basically on it's not making a mistake at all tonight, really.
Oh, indeed. And right now, we're looking at Peter Lemkins as he's making his way up into Arenberg, and we've got a whole cluster of cars ahead of Lemkins right now. They're all trying to sort themselves out into an order here before they come down into the compression. And whilst you were just explaining with regards to that, we do see that Digital Car Culture has said hello in the YouTube chat, and we say hello to Digital Car Culture in return. We hope you're doing well, my friend. But right now, as all side drivers are making their way around. One question for yourself, Matt, with regards to the rules tonight. We're running the normal rules for the 2-hour races.
around the endurance setup, the endurance race, so to speak. So if I put it on here, you can have a proper good race at what is one of the world's most famous tracks, and you can all learn the 2-hour endurance solo race without me just having to describe it to everyone.
Oh, definitely, and that's what we just quickly flashed up on the screen there with regards to the rules. So just to clarify, it is the case that our drivers have the 30 minutes qualifying session, and they're also running the medium downforce setups, the fixed setup in iRacing?
It is, yes.
And
it's the endurance setup, because there's two choices when I come to set it all up. So we've got the medium downforce sprint and the medium downforce endurance, and even though they're meant to be medium downforce, both the same, the car can drive completely differently. So tonight everyone's using the endurance setup for obvious reasons.
Oh, definitely. They're going to need it here at a circuit which is the ultimate test of endurance. And just coming on to that rule, last but not least, with regards to what is the tyre changes. So when we say that they must change tyres once, that's all 4 tyres must be changed at least once.
Correct. I've heard some people last season, I think it was 2 or 3 drivers last season at Spa, that actually took 2 front tyres at the first stop and 2 rear tyres at the second. But so long as they took all 4, then I didn't have a complaint about it.
So in respect to that, why would you want to split the tyre changes? Because surely you'd want the best possible set of tyres across the entire car.
I don't know myself, to be honest. I was a bit stumped at that, but it's what people have practiced and they think it works, and I don't want to drop names or anything, so I don't want to say if it worked or not.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing whether that is the case tonight, where we see that potential split. As right now, we're just watching what is Paul Williams making his way up towards the top of the hill, heading up towards the carousel now, and as he makes his way all the way up the long run in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, what would you say might be the ideal car for tonight, or the cars that we can expect to do the best here?
Well, every car's got its strength and every car's got its weaknesses. The technical sections, I think the Porsche, the Audi and the Ferrari will do well, but I think when it comes to the longest straights where you can put your power down, you're going to be looking BMW, McLaren's quite nippy at the minute, and then I think I've never driven the 4GT, so I can't comment on that. But what I've been told, that is really fast in a straight line as well. So it's going to be one of them. I think you stick with what you know, and you try and make it to your advantage.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And unfortunately, we're not seeing, as far as I'm aware, we're not going to be seeing any Ford GTs this season, or at least not in these pre-season tests right now. Nobody wants to bring it.
I think one person has selected the Ford GT, but I think they're racing next week. I'm just checking my list now, because I'm sure I saw 4GT when I filled them all in. Yes, I did. Daniel Holmer on the sign-up forms put 4GT, so we might actually see one next season.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I mean, not to say that we haven't got enough car variety as it is, as right now we're watching Håkon Grebstad making his way through Flansgarden Zwei and absolutely hammering it on his outlap here in the McLaren MP412C. As he comes roaring down right now, nobody has yet crossed that timing line to go on to their first flying lap of this circuit. But coming back to the Ford GT, if we just see the one out there, I think it's going to be the equivalent of what George Bland was able to achieve last season in the AMS with the MP412. Nobody wanted to be in that than him.
No, it wasn't. To be honest, how he could drive that thing as fast as he could and as fast as he did is shocking, because to me and a lot of other people that have driven it, and now I'm probably going to get some messages about saying this, but it oversteers and understeers. You don't. It's so unpredictable. You don't know how to drive it. You don't know. It's one of them that if you can drive it fast like George can, you're quick in any car, in my opinion, because I think he said he's swapping to the Porsche next season. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see we've still got another McLaren out in, is it Håkon, you said?
Yep, he's driving it. He's just making his way down to the end of Dottinger right now.
And then it'd be nice, like we said, if we see the Ford as well, because I think then we've actually got a minimum of one of each car.
Oh, that'd be absolutely brilliant, as nobody wanted to pick the bogey car last season of the BMW Z4.
I did offer to be in it for one race, but nobody took me up on it.
Well, without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to jump on board with Grebstad here as he takes us around for a lap in the McLaren. Do you want to take us away in terms of riding on board?
I'll leave it to you because you seem to know a bit more about it than I do.
Alrighty, so Grebstad making his way down into turn 1 here. The chicane hairpin, turns 1 and 2, because we cut off the Mercedes arena. And as he makes his way through, currently in first gear, they're having to use first gear to rotate the car through, being gentle on the throttle before now going on the full attack down towards turn number 3 here. Coming into 4th gear before bringing it down into 3rd and looking to keep the car tight to the left-hand side because he wants to line the car up for the run down towards the 2nd of the hairpins here. Using 2nd to rotate through turn 4 before building up on the throttle and now charging down towards the turn 5 hairpin. Known as the double apex hairpin by some because you look to turn it into 2 mini corners, but we're going to see here he goes for a single apex, a wide apex instead, and from 2nd gear now attacking that exit and accelerating up through the Schumacher S's, which is turns 6 and 7 here. So as he makes his way through, riding high on the entry and a apex curve at turn 6 and then throwing the car in a straight line across 7 before rip-roaring down towards 8 here. Up into 5th gear, not being pushed up towards top gear as of yet, but as he now makes his way through turn number 8 here, staying to the left-hand side once again to line himself up for 9. We're seeing Grebstad already using the width there of the circuit plus the McLaren's rotational abilities to his advantage as he now makes his way down into turn number 10. Through the flat-out turn number 10 here before heading up towards Vidal chicane, turns 11 and 12 and looking for that 50-metre board on the right-hand side. That's what he's going to use as his brake marker. Comes all the way down to 3rd gear, trail braking in and then a whacking the throttle back on there as he makes his way through 12 and now goes into the left-hander of 13 and up onto the Nordschleife loop. So as he comes through the left-hander here, he makes his way into Spin Smith curve. And we're going to see him come all the way down to 2nd gear, staying away from 1st gear, interestingly, and using the pit exit there in order to widen the corner for roaring now down the run through the right-handers here, just building up that speed and making his way up into 5th gear here. Full commitment from the Norwegian, I must admit right now, as he makes his way into left into right sequence and just gradually teases the car through the right-hander before making his way back through the left-right left combination here, the triple chicane sequence, and now getting ready to make his way onto the run down towards what is Flugplatz. And now as he comes out to the right into left here, he does the long run into Flugplatz here. And now, oh, goodness speed, he loses the rear of the car there and the car into the wall. And that is very unfortunate, just ran a little bit too wide and clipped the wall. And he's jumped back to the pits. That was very unfortunate.
It was. I mean, it's what can happen when you deliberately put one wheel on the grass and put the power down a bit too much.
Well, most definitely, and we're seeing Tom Mal right now making his way, or Tom Marley I should say, making his way across onto his opening flying lap there in a rather colourful Lamborghini Huracan, you have to say.
I've just locked it onto cockpit view, I'll just change it. Oh yeah, very different. It reminds me of the old, what were they called, Volkswagen, Volkswagen did a special where every panel was a different colour. Someone in the chat's going to be saying this later or something, but Well,
it reminds me of one of my neighbours just down the road from me. Every panel of their car is a different colour, but I can assure you it's not because it's a race car.
No. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, well, whilst you're trying to reminisce over what the Volkswagen car is, just looking a little bit further around, we've got Stefan Albanese here. I believe that's how you say it. Albanese, in fact, the Italian driver here, who's debuting in Season 2 in a rather fetching BMW M4. Just making his way now in towards the second half of the lap, just going into the left-hander before heading up towards Bergwerk here. And just in your experience with regards to the BMW M4, Matt, what makes it such an attractive car? I know you were talking a little bit about its top-end speed earlier on, but we've seen it's quite good in the handling sectors as well.
It's because of its size. This is what I think. But comparing the size of it to the Porsche and the Audi, which are possibly the best handling cars on iRacing, it's so stable, and you can ride curbs with it a bit easier than you can with a lot of other cars. But the only major downfall to it is on the fixed setup, you can't adjust your traction control, ABS, or anything like that. You'd be a bit too early on that throttle, and as you've seen with myself over the season, especially at Le Mans when I threw away a possible race win, you can spin the back wheels up and you are into the wall or spun off, as I'm sure you will see a few people at Daytona do it in a couple of weeks.
Oh, most definitely. And just whilst you were saying that, we have had Rob Sutherland there in the YouTube chat say it was the Volkswagen Polo Harlequin car.
That's the one. I knew someone would say it, so thank you very much for helping me out there.
Well, we appreciate it, Mr. Sutherland, and we hope you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, as we are almost into the halfway point of this qualifying session right now. And whilst we do have Stefan Albanese here making his way through the carousel and keeping it nice and tight all the way around there, and now flexing his way back out of the carousel. The lap times that we're looking at tonight, based on what you've heard, Matt, we're looking at about 8:07s, I believe, or somewhere around that.
8:07s? Have you cut off the Grand Prix circuit there?
I think I may have. I may have misread some times.
Well, the best person that has messaged me and told me lap times is our pro champion from last season, who I'm currently watching now to try and learn a bit better myself, Billy Fletcher. He's run 3 different cars in practice to see which one he was best in, and it was an 8-minute 20 in the Porsche, an 8:17 in the Ferrari, and an 8:16 in the BMW. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. But as you can see, he's in matching colours with what my BMW looks like for this season.
Oh, most definitely. You two will be forming a team together, I believe.
Yes, we are. He's been helping me out in areas where I think I need strengthening, and we got chatting and stuff. And we with the idea of the team's championship for next season being a maximum of 3, and at the time it was Billy and Matt. I said to him, "Look, do you want me to partner with you? Because I know I've got 3 for NXTGEN Esports." And Billy just said, "Yes, we'll run as a team, got the 3 of us." And then I don't know what's happened to Matt Caruana, but it's just me and Billy for next season.
Well, it's sounding positive. Caruana is somewhere around at the moment. I think, in fact, he's in the pit lane, so I can't quite see him on circuit or on our circuit tracker. But focusing on Billy right now, so I think it's quite the learning experience for yourself, looking as Billy not only as your teammate, but also a mentor in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, the things he's taught me, I never would have thought of even making a big difference, without going into many details. But fingers crossed, you'll see a bit of an improvement from myself next season.
Oh, we definitely look forward to that, but what we also look forward to a little bit more in the short term right now is the first laps coming in. Fletcher's just making his way onto the Dottingham straight very shortly as he takes a very nice sweep there through the right-hander beforehand and charges all the way down. We've also got Prouting right now, Matthew Prouting heading down that way as well, albeit he's not had the best of laps, it should be said. Prouting, he's gone a little bit negative in some of his sectors, particularly in the second half of the lap. He's also in the BMW M4. And for those tuning in, by the way, I should clarify that you are going to see that a number of our drivers are missing their team tags and also their Pro-Am and Am class tags. We are gradually building that data up over the course of the pre-season test events. There's a number of reasons why we do these tests. It's not just to give our drivers what experience, but also make sure that we can log all of our drivers' data in preparation for the main season. So if you're wondering why certain details are missing, don't panic. We will be getting those populated by the time we do officially go racing. But that's why we're not going to be talking too much today about the classes. Instead, we'll just be focusing on the racing of our drivers as Prouting crosses the line for our first lap time.
An 8:18.7, which is a really good lap, and then Billy comes across with a 17.3.
Oh, indeed.
And I think he's parking up.
Yeah, I think he feels he's done enough. As you can see it there, comes across with an 8:21.5, and the Am driver there in the Jägermeister machine going for another lap.
Yeah, I think Joachim could say he's got home advantage this week in the GT3 cars.
Oh, most definitely, and looking very, very happy in that car. I must admit, it's always good to see Joachim Siegert bringing out the BMW, but he looks so well. I think he just enjoys that car.
He does. I mean, he tested the Porsche, I think, first pre-season, and he just said it drives nice, he likes it, but the BMW is where he feels most comfortable. And as I've been told off a few drivers, and I've told a few drivers, the first thing you want to do with these GT3 cars is find a car that makes you comfortable and you know you can push a bit, because if you go into something that you think, oh, I'll get used to it over time, you'll find you won't be able to get comfortable and getting quick, otherwise you'll start making mistakes.
Oh, most definitely. I can say that from personal experience as well with regards to car choice in other sims that I've raced in, that going with a car that you enjoy is much better than going with a car that everybody sees as perhaps the best or is seen as the best a particular circuit, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's got to drive it around the circuit. Nobody else is going to drive it for you.
No, I know. I mean, as everyone saw, I changed car. I think it was 3 times last season, and the only car that I ever felt most comfortable in was the BMW. The Porsche, I did learn a bit. The Audi, again, I did learn a bit, but no, I'm most comfortable and most happy driving the BMW unless it's around this circuit.
Well,
because I always forget which corners they're coming up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of comfort right now, we're seeing a number of drivers going on to actual flying laps here. For example, we're currently taking a look at Kurt Van Hoenacker. I think did do a brief jump to the pits after going out initially for something that went a little bit wrong. But we've only got 8 lap times up on the board right now, and Fletcher does seem to be the informed driver. They're 1.3 seconds faster than anybody else. Are you seeing anything out on circuit in terms of drivers going fast, or just observations so far?
Not really, to be honest. Me flicking through the drivers, there's a few drivers that I think are testing possible new cars for next season. The McChallenge.be boys all look to be in Audis now, which is I know they were all in Porsches last season.
They were indeed, but sorry to interrupt you. We've just had a new provisional pole lap come in. That's Tom Marley with an 8:14.617 in the Harlequin Lamborghini. Very, very strong lap.
Yeah, very strong, very fast. Yeah, I didn't think anyone could get that low around this combined layout.
Well, we have seen that Lamborghini back in Season 1 was an incredibly strong car. It just seemed to have a little bit of everything, but of course it was the Beast, which if it was unleashed too much, it seemed to be a handful. But to be on top of that as well, Marley putting in that lap and then going again here, could we expect him to go even faster?
Quite possibly. I mean, his practice time was an 8:14.4, so if you can find another 2 or 3 tenths, it's certainly going to make a big difference.
And he is going to have one more lap after this, so if he feels he can push it even further, he's just using this lap to build himself up. That would be a real achievement right now. I mean, how far can he go? Can we see an 8:13 from him?
Quite possibly. It all depends on how much life he takes out of these tyres, because you start pushing really hard on some of these tyres and some of these cars, and they really can start to deteriorate quick. And as we all have seen, it's really hard not to overheat the tyres as well, so it's quite a good balancing act, to be honest.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of balance and acts, I've just politely had it corrected to me, and I appreciate this from Rob Sutherland in the YouTube chat. It's male as in gender. So Tom's surname is Male, not Marley, just male. Just tell you the gender.
Nah, I'll remember that myself for next season.
Yeah. And do, by the way, folks, if at any point you do think that we're butchering somebody's name or making a complete hash brown of it, do point it out to us at the end of the day, because otherwise we'll continue to butcher it and we'll end up doing our own version of a set of Murrayisms, as they used to be known, from the great Murray Walker. As we're just taking a look at now, Morten S. Oosterhuis here, making his way in the Switchback Motorsport machine all the way down into Arenberg in the Audi R8. And the Audi R8, a lot of rotation of the cars you were saying, Matt, a handling car here, could go quite well, particularly in the more technical sections. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, like we were saying before, it's that, the Porsche, and the... What else did I say? I'm having a moment here. Yeah, it's definitely one of the cars that definitely handles a lot better as he gets a twitch on there. But it's just... There's that many long, flat-out sections.
Oh, goodness me. And he's just gone very, very high on the exit curb there and got that very wrong. And I think found a way to shorten the course, but I don't think the automated stewards are going to be happy with that one.
No, I definitely agree with you on that one. I think he did a me. So, I mean, you'll get just a 1 times off track for that, so it'll invalidate his lap time, and he will have to go again. I just don't know if he'll have enough time to get 1 more lap in. I think he will, but we'll see.
I'd say
as he runs wide and into the wall.
I think that Audi's going to be jumping to the pits, and that may be the end of his qualifying session.
Yeah, by the looks of it.
Well, meanwhile,
yeah.
Looking elsewhere, we've got Nigel Stock there in the pink to black BMW M4, just making his way up through Vidal right now and heading up towards turn 13. And Stock, to be fair, one of the drivers who was a little bit of a dark horse in Season 1 in what was originally the Mercedes AMG SLS, until he made the switch midway through the season to the Lamborghini Huracan, if my memory serves me well. And now he's trying out the BMW today.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when Nigel swapped to the Lamborghini, it was the strongest car from last season, but Nigel just seems so at home and comfortable with it. I mean, I think it was only he had a couple of bad rounds where incidents went against him. A bit of bad luck here and there, but he really was in with a good shout for the top 3 at least, and then these incidents happened and it kind of threw his chances away. And why not in pre-season think about having a go in a different car and just seeing if it can work for you?
Oh, definitely. If you can give it a little bit of experimentation, and that's what these events are for, of course. Simply just giving yourself the opportunity to drive a different car and see whether it works for you. And what a circuit to test the car. You've got everything at this circuit. Oh, goodness me, and he's into the wall there, coming out of Flugplatz.
Yeah, I think he just clipped the grass a bit too much, and as I was saying before, just left the power on a bit too much, and the back end went round on it.
Oh, indeed. And meanwhile, whilst it's at his detriment, we can see that we've got the Debova family charging around right now in matching Audis. We've got Jeremy Debova just making his way towards the end of the lap right now, getting ready to go through the Kleiners carousel, which is the small left-hander.
And I think Navarro's got a bit of damage on his rear wing looking at it, so that's going to hamper him on the corners and the straight.
Definitely, it does look as though Navarro's had a bit of a scrape with the wall, but he's going to come to the end of the lap here to set a time, I believe. I don't think it's going to be the best of times, but he's going to get a time on the board.
No, I don't think it's counted.
No, instead we've had an update from Jean-Louis Deschamps, but we haven't had anything from Navarro. But meanwhile, what can Jeremy do? Well, he's making his way down the dot in O'Hara right now, and I think deciding to read a bit of a book whilst making his way down the straight here, given how long the straight is.
Yeah, but the thing is with this straight, like I was saying before, you think, yeah, I've nearly completed the lap, I can relax a bit. You really, really can't with how bumpy it is, and like we were saying about the force feedback, it can throw you off. It is really that, and then it's as he's coming up now, you really have to get your braking points right, otherwise you total in your car and are going to get a DNF in the race for going straight on into that wall.
And speaking of damaging cars, I believe in today's race our drivers will have 2 fast repairs available?
I think so, yeah. Yes, they do. I can't remember how many I put on myself. Yeah, during the endurance, I always thought, because with the lengthier race, shall we say, I'd be a bit fairer and say, we'll give you that extra mistake time, so to speak.
Oh, most definitely. It makes sense at the end of the day, as we can see right now, one driver who's definitely improving he's improved over the course of Season 1 and is looking to improve in these pre-season test events, and it'll be interesting to see how far he's come the start of Season 2. Gareth Mills, the South African driver right now, just making his way a little bit wide there in the downhill left-hander, just as we're seeing his praises, and he's jumped to the pits then. He's in the Porsche 911 today.
Yeah, I think was he in the BMW all last season as well?
Yep, he was in the BMW.
Yeah, it's just like we were saying, finding a car that he was comfortable with, and with Gareth, I think he enjoyed the BMW, like the way it drives, but I just think he wants to try something else and see if that works for him, so to speak. And I must admit, I always liked his liveries with the black and green. It always stands out.
Oh, most definitely. And one other livery that does stand out, albeit for the more classical cars, we see Blomqvist goes 18.6, and that's provisional P3. We're just taking a look at Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who once again is bringing the Ferrari 488 and bringing it in the traditional Scuderia colours, the full red there, based off of the sort of Formula 1 style colours.
Yeah, well, it worked for him last week after Interlagos when I think he took the AM win, didn't he?
He did indeed, and he's parked the car up and jumped to the pits. I think he's had enough of this qualifying session and doesn't think he can improve any further, but Paul Scott has gone and put in another lap, an 8:28.704 for Scott, so he has found some time out there.
Yeah, there's always going to be on a track of this length where you think you can go out and find that 3 or 4 tenths, and it will eventually all come together, but with it being qualifying and having, like we were saying, such a big track and limited time, you've got to just keep going for it and hopefully not making a mistake, which, as we've all seen, is quite easy to do.
Oh, most definitely. And now, with only what is 2 minutes of the qualifying session to go before our drivers either go into overtime in terms of they must finish the lap they're currently on, or their qualifying's over if they're not currently on a lap here, we've got a large number of drivers in the lobby tonight, but only so far 15 times registered. Yeah,
I mean, I've actually been looking at that for a few minutes myself. I think a lot of people just aren't managing to complete a lap and set a time, which is quite, well, I would say it's surprising, but with the difficulty of this track, it can be so easy to get that one off track, and it causes you not to set a lap time, as we see Sam Holman with a 8:32.6.
Holman putting in the lap, indeed, and in the Mr. Sparkle Porsche 991, where you got to say it may not be the most attractive livery, depending on your personal inclinations, but it's definitely going to stand out.
Oh, yes, it definitely is. I mean, we'll see that one in the crowd.
Yeah. Oh, I do love it though. To be fair, it does fit the profile of the Porsche, but I think he might need to run some particular logos on that car when we do go racing for the official season, so it might be disrupted a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I think the admin team will probably have a chat with him.
Oh, I'm sure he'll sparkle tonight under the spotlights at the Nurburgring circuit, albeit it is sunshine. It's not at night time, but have we got anybody on a lap right now? That's the big question as we are coming to the end of this session. Well, apart from Holman, who is currently provisional P15, who else have we got out there at the moment? I think we've got Blomqvist.
Yeah, Grebstad's just gone wrong at the chicane on the GP layout, so he's abandoning his lap. I think everyone actually is on at Navarro still out with his damaged rear wing. And Gamborg Rasmussen's just coming out the GP layout, so is he going to be able to get his lap time?
I'll just try to find Rasmussen. There he is. He's just had a bit of a difficult run through 13 going into what is, I was going to say Jochen Schmidt curve then. No, it's definitely not. It's, I can't remember her name now. Goodness me, I'm getting...
Sabine Schmidt.
Sabine Schmidt curve, that's the one. And as, unfortunately, Sabine Schmidt leaving us earlier this year, which was very sad to hear. The lady, for those who are not uninitiated, Sabine Schmidt, look her up, the lady who's taken multiple cars around the Nürburgring Nordschleife circuit and is seen as the master, or the mistress I should really say, getting my gender pronouns correct, the mistress of the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring. So much so, known most perhaps for taking a Ford Transit van charging around the circuit and trying to get a time that's sub 10 minutes.
I think, did she actually complete it?
I think she was very close.
Saw the end of it. I never actually saw the end of it, so I actually don't know.
I can't remember. Oh, goodness me. And just as we're saying it with regards to Gamborg Rasmussen making his way through Flugplatz there, while the Switchback Motorsport machines went into the wall. I think that was Lucas Romano who went into the wall there as they were coming on through.
I think it was... Was it not Navarro de Bova?
It may have been Navarro. It looked like a Switchback Motorsport car. That's why I wouldn't say it was Navarro, but I could be wrong.
I thought it was Navarro because I saw the damage on the rear wing, but I could be wrong.
Meanwhile, going from one end of the circuit to another, we've got Jamie Dory here in the next-gen colours, making his way, flying down towards the final pair of corners here in the Audi R8, coming to the end of a lap.
Finding there he is. Yeah, he's not managed not to set a flat time yet, but knowing Jamie, he'll probably have took it a bit easier this lap, and hopefully we'll be able to get a time on the board.
As he crosses that timing line, what's it going to be? If it is one, it puts him at provisional P16 at 8:31.0. I think just keeping it smart and sweet in that one and not pushing the car too hard.
Yeah, definitely. But and as we were saying about Sabine before, it's I've having now driven this, I know on iRacing, not in real life, I've got a new level of respect for her because she knew every corner to this track like the back of her hand, and after 2 or 3 hours on a simulator, I still don't know half the track. It's just, she was something else. She was just an amazing woman.
Oh, most definitely. And one who's going to be missed throughout the ages within motorsport. And it's very sad that we've lost her so soon. We thought, well, I used to watch her on what was Top Gear as well when she joined the Top Gear crew for a period of time, and that was fantastic. Her insights were very different, you could argue, compared to the rest of the presenters there, but just someone who seemed to really enjoy driving.
Yeah, definitely. He saw it as more than a job, of a hobby and a lifestyle, and yeah, just what I remember. I think the best moment, bar the transit van moment, was when. When was it? This season? I think it was this season. No, last season. When Freddie, Paddy, and Chris Harris turned the hearse into a family car. Was it?
Oh yes, I remember.
Yeah, and the banger racing at the end in it, and all you hear Sabine's voice over the radio as Jamie Dory takes a bit of a wide line there, shall we say?
I see, going into the pits. They're deciding to cut his way back in because I think he's completed his qualifying session.
Yep. Is there anyone else left on track?
We have Jochen Seeger, who is, well, I think he's limping the car around a little bit. He did have a very slow moment a couple of corners, well, we want to say a couple, about 6-7 corners back through Flansgarden 9s. But he's making his way down onto Dottenham right now. We've got Øystein Hereford here in the Audi R8, a very fetching liveried Audi R8, I must say, going through Flansgaard Zwei right now and really going in the offensive. I think he's on a lap and pushing it. Looking at his sector times, he has set the fastest sector 9 of anybody so far, and he's got actually quite a few purple sector times appearing, so I think this could be an improved lap on its way.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, he's got the second carousel a little bit wrong there.
Oh, will he got an off track for that? That's the question, though, because it'll invalidate his lap time.
Very close there to putting it into the wall. I know myself in a racing league I took part in. That's where I lost a Nissan GTR GT3 coming out of the Kleiners carousel and put it into the wall. Then had to nurse the car home on the final lap with damage on the front end.
Yeah, as he comes down the long straight, is he backing out of it, or is he still? I think he's still going for it.
He's continuing the charge. He's pushing it all the way to the end, and a bit further up the road he's got Gareth Williams in the BMW M4 who's making his way to the end of a lap, and we've also got Daniel Blomqvist who's making his way, I think, behind these guys. Yep, he's behind the pair of them in his own BMW M4. And we also have in the chat Tom Mail there saying hello, and saying hello to Rob as well. It's good to see you in the chat, Tom, and I hope you're looking forward to going racing very shortly, given that at the moment you're provisional pole, and I think you're going to be taking pole at the end of this one, unless we do see any surprises here from, say, the likes of Øystein Hereford. As Øystein comes to the timing line, what's it going to be? Well, Gareth Williams goes P2 on an 8:17.2. What does Hereford do? I don't. Wait, he does improve to an 8:19.0, but it's not enough to move him from P6. And Blomqvist goes up to P2 and 8:15.995.
Wow.
Well, to be fair, that was a very strong lap there. But Mail takes pole position in the end by 1.3 seconds. Some stonking, very strong laps here.
Yeah, very. I mean, like I was saying before, I'm kind of glad I'm not racing now because I had a bid last. I think I got an 8:47 was my fastest.
Well, we've only had 18 drivers put times in, and looking on my sheets here, we do seem to have somewhere in the region of about 30 to 35 drivers planning to take part.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to think that last season at Daytona, I think we only had 36 drivers beginning the entire season. Well, I think we ended up with 40 odd. And now going into next season, we've obviously got the second lobby open. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can advance the session to the race.
That's absolutely fine. Everyone's just, I think, patiently waiting right now because I don't think anybody's on a lap per se. Everyone's just waiting to go racing.
It will not let me advance. Session already finishing, it says.
Well, you're not allowed to pass. Go and collect £200 at the Nurburgring, it would seem, today in iRacing. You've got to patiently wait instead. As we just see there, KTM's in the Facebook chat. I think we might have missed this comment a little while back from the Facebook chat. Blinken, you'll miss qualifying. Didn't even realise there was only 10 minutes to go. It shows I was too busy eating my birthday Chinese. Well, happy birthday to you, Katie. We hope that you've had a good birthday and you're looking forward to some racing, as we're just waiting for the countdown now to go racing for 2 hours at the Nurburgring 24-hour.
Yeah, I think we've just got 5 minutes before we'll start seeing the grid form up.
Goodness me, is that the overtime that's allotted in the qualifying session?
For this one, yes, it was 12 minutes maximum.
I think everybody right now will just be patiently waiting down the paddock. And just take us through, Matt, in your experience, when you're waiting like this after doing qualifying, how do you as a driver get? Do you get fidgety? Do you start thinking, oh, come on, I just want to go racing? Or is it more of the calm before the storm and you're just thinking, okay, go through the procedure of this is how I'm going to do the race, etc.?
I'll be honest, in my experience now, I take this really, really seriously. And let's say I get a good top 5 qualifying in my class, I sit there and start fidgeting, and I get actually really, really nervous. I don't know why. Every time I think, right, I just need to, put my head down, the nerves just always get to me, so to speak.
I can understand that. I can appreciate where you come from with regards to that. And I think whilst we do have a couple of minutes to go, we can see Billy Fletcher parked up right now. Anybody you think it would be your sort of prediction for the race, or perhaps a little bit of a dark horse?
For the pro class, I'm not going to say to count on. I think Anthony Beck might come through and surprise us all, because as we've all seen, if you make one little mistake, you could be into the wall with how wide but narrow the runoffs are. And then with it being such a long lap, you're either going to have the 14-minute tow, I think it is, or you're going to have to limp back round to the pits and get in and get out, so to speak. So it's going to be quite difficult, to be honest. But for the Pro-Ams, I'm going to throw my neck out there and say Paul Scott is going to be one that will be quite quick, as well as Jeremy DeBova. And for the AMs, I can't say many of my teammates because none of them are racing. But for the AMs, there's quite some very good quick drivers that, like Stefan Gambo Rasmussen. He really consistent driver, really knows where to put his car and can be really, really patient. Sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments that are coming through in the lobby while everyone's waiting. But yeah, who would your money be on then, if you don't mind me asking, or do you want to stay a neutral?
So if I was to sort of call out people to keep an eye on, well, of course, we do have to go with our champion from Season 1, and that is Billy Fletcher. I suspect that Fletcher's always going to be up there towards the front. If he's not the fastest, then Fletcher will find a way to achieve a good result through consistency. Other drivers in the pros, I'd definitely keep an eye on Tom Mayle, with the fact that he's put in an absolutely phenomenal pole lap there, the best part of 1.3 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. I'd say that Mayle feels very comfortable at this circuit, or at least driving on the limits of this circuit seems to be his forte. And we'll have to see what he's able to achieve when we switch to race conditions. Outside of the pro class, looking more towards the pro-ams, well, it's always a case that you've got to count in the Ignium Motorsport guys, and we're looking at Ben Hicks right now, who I believe was one of, if not the fastest pro-am drivers in this qualifying session, coming in provisional P8 and then finally confirmed as P8 in the end, with not too bad of a lap time. And one of the other Pro-Ams, a driver who I do not know if they're still at the circuit. In fact, he is still at the circuit. He hasn't put in the time. Dirk Bounce there, a driver who really came into form in the second half of Season 1 and started to show a major amount of consistency. He had a number of incidents that just did not go his way, or he found himself right in the middle of heated incidents where he was one of the poor victims of the incident. But we'll wait to see what Bounce is able to do, the Belgian, quite a fast driver. Meanwhile, looking at the AMs, I would say really when you look at the AMs, you've got to look at firstly Jochen Siegert, who I'm not sure if he's still at the circuit at the moment, so we can't actually see his car. But if he is planning to do this race, a very consistent driver, and when he's in the zone, he's quite untouchable. And last but not least, my other recommendation within the would be the AM class, would be Mark Baker. Don't rule him out there in the blue-white striped Ferrari 488. And for those wondering, why does he run that livery? Well, if you don't know, Mark Baker does take part in a number of series in real life, and you can see in the little profile picture there in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen that he's running that livery, I believe, to mimic the livery of his car. And I cannot for life of me remember what cars he normally races. I think they're Rovers for some reason, I want to say, and that is in the style of the car he races in the real world.
You just sworn at me.
Oh, have I?
I'm an avid lover, and I know some people that know me in this chat now are going to start laughing at me. An avid lover of Rover MGs. And yes, it is a Rover MGF, but to some people it is an MG. I get a bit upset sometimes, shall we say.
Oh, speaking of upsets, it's now time as the grid transitions over here to see if there are going to be any upsets in the race itself as we just wait for that grid to form. So it is the case that as we look to our track temperature right now, which is coming up to roughly 35 degrees centigrade, 20 degrees ambient here, and the grid now forms. Let's go through the front 6 rows of the grid. So Tom Mount lines up on pole with an 814.617. Alongside him will be Daniel Blomqvist, and then we have got got Gareth Williams and Billy Fletcher lined up on the second row, Matthew Proutin, Oystein Hereford on the third row, Anthony Beck and Ben Hicks on the fourth row, Jeremy Debova and Jochen Seeger and Jeremy Debova, I should say, in the right order on the fifth row, and then completing our top 12, it's Jean-Louis Deschamps and Deirdre de Verlaming. And just to point out for those of you, we didn't talk about it at the start, if you are watching tonight, you can tune in via both YouTube and also Facebook. That's the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, the NXTGEN Racing official Facebook group, and on top of that, if you are inclined to spectate via Twitch, you can always tune in via Twitch at TX141. But without further ado now, the grid's being formed. I think we're just waiting for Tom Male to take his position on the front row. As we can see Zoronic waving to us in the Twitch chat, and we've also got KT Eames in the Facebook chat. Once again saying to yourself, Matt, you and your MGs, but to be fair, we loved our ZTT.
Yes, we did.
Sounds like there's a little bit of a story there.
No, one of my... Katie will know about this because she bought her fiance bought a MG ZTT off the garage I work for, and they've admitted to me a few times it's probably one of the best cars they've ever owned.
Oh, that's good to hear. And really now, as we're waiting to get underway, that grid still being formed here. We've got more drivers still waiting to get their place on the grid. I think Paul Scott's yet to put himself on the grid. We've got a grid of building up to what is 38 drivers, I believe.
I think it might be a few less as looking at it. Oh no. Yeah, we're gonna have 36, I think. Other than I can't find Matt Caruana.
And Matt Caruana does seem to have disappeared a bit further down, and yourself on my timing screen you just dropped down to P36, but that's because you're not racing, you're in the commentary box there, you put the car keys away, but we can see it's Tom Male right now taking us down onto the Dottinger behind the safety car here and getting ready for the racing action. So as all of our drivers make their way down now, it's going to be quite a long tour down towards the start-finish line where we'll be expecting Tom Male to take us away for the green, and we can see Blomqvist there just alongside him right now. And in terms of that race start, what are you looking to achieve at the start if you're in Male's situation? Matt, are you looking to try and psych him out, or is it alternatively just focusing on when you're going to be going green?
If I was Tom Male currently, I'd be focusing when to go green, because with the start-finish straight and the start-finish line being so high up, he's going to have to be careful with people behind him, the likes of Williams, Fletcher, Prouting, Hereford. They'll get a slipstream and they might just be able to get him into the first corner.
Well, as we're now waiting for him to come out of the final corners, then it's going to be Tom Male who takes us away very shortly, and we are going to be going racing any moment now. And it's go, go, go. He's released it nice and early there as we go to the green, and they come all roaring down towards turn one, and we can see immediately Male catching Blomqvist out massively there, and Blomqvist under increasing pressure already going down into turn one, as we see Fletcher trying to get the move on here from P3. He's already got past Gaz Williams, it should be pointed out, and Williams looks that move on the inside, but he can't find it as Fletcher tries to go the outside to inside into two, and behind him we can see Oystein Hereford there trying to get the move on, but not able to find it here. Looks as though Male's made a very strong start, but meanwhile further down, I'm hearing there has been a bit of an instant further down the order as we see it's Jochen Seeger battling with what is there Jeremy Debova in the run up into turn 3, but Seeger holds the outside line, takes that racing line through, and Jean-Louis Deschamps simply has to tuck in behind our top 10 or the top 11 already making their breakaway, and then Deirdre de Verlaming up into P12 here in a rather fetching liveried Audi R8 there as he makes his way down towards the turn 5 hairpin, but holding his ground right now as we see behind him. That looks like it's Kevin van der Sil who is on the offensive, or in fact being on under the attack from what behind him is Paul Scott there, and Paul Scott in a rather standout BMW M4 chasing after him but losing momentum out the hairpin, and he's now got Grevstad after him. But it's been quite the start, you have to say, Matt, hasn't it?
It has. I thought Van der Slip was going to go for a move on Jamie Dory then. Oh, is he? No. Oh, he has.
Yeah, he's gone for it, I believe.
Yeah, just sending it up on the inside, throwing the dummy at him, which really, really nice to see, and really, really clean overtake in the end.
Indeed, and as our drivers now make their way to the end of what is the GP circuit, Paul Scott losing a couple of places and battling side by side here with Group Strand as they make their way up towards Vidal's chicane here, and surely Paul Scott's going to be really out of position as they make their way up into Vidal, but in the end they all settle back into a line and calm it down. But it's definitely been the case as we're hearing that Gaz Williams has had a major moment going off the circuit. He's gone off at Vidal and is just rejoining right now, but I think Gaz Williams is going to be coming into the pits, or 30, he's going to go racing, but he drops all the way down from what was the top 10. He's dropped down to 32nd before even going onto the Nordschleife loop, and now he's got all the traffic ahead of him, starting of course there with Nigel Stock. How on earth is he going to recover this now? Because he's surely not going to have many overtaking opportunities until he gets up towards Arenberg.
Well, quite possibly, but as we've seen before in many races, with the group so packed up, he could get a bit lucky and have some bad luck go for everyone else and a few incidents and just help him propel him up the track.
Well, most definitely. Luck can go your way and it can also take away. And speaking of people who are taken away, it is the case that Oisley Erford has taken P3 off of Billy Fletcher and is now taken away off into the distance. He's already opened up a gap of what is 4/10 of a second, but Fletcher is going to be coming back at him here in the long run up towards Arenberg corner right now. And this is where that BMW straight line speed is going to come into effect, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely, but he's coming up into the middle section of the track where it's going to be more Audi territory, I think. Like we were saying before, the Audi, the turning and the drive out is just immense compared to the BMW, but Billy's done really well to get it to stay on his back bumper there.
Oh, definitely. It does seem as though we've got the BMW army chasing after the one Audi right now as they make their way into the compression. But as they come roaring now up into the left into a right combination here, the blind summit is here, they come, and we can see it is the case, as you were saying there, Matt, with regards to the handling nature of the Audi. It's just Hereford's able to take just a little bit more momentum into the corners, but to be fair, Fletcher is not letting him go, and as a result, as we're hearing that Rasmussen has just jumped to the pits, Gamble Rasmussen, who has had an incident somewhere out on the circuit, it does look as though the top end of our field, particularly what is the top six, are starting to make the breakaway, as meanwhile in P7 we've got Ben Hicks, Medium Motorsport, making his way now up towards what is the sequence of corners. Oh goodness, we've got a car off there, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that's Anthony Beck into the wall coming out of the double left-handers.
Yeah, definitely was. As we've seen, he might have just put a wheel on the grass and lost the back end, and to be honest, I think he's just going to try and nurse it back to the pits and use a fast repair now.
And I think for him as well, one of the difficulties is he's got the entire pack making its way through, and he's got to find somewhere where he can get back up to racing speed, as he does so finally as he makes his way into Bergwerk here. But it is a case that he's had to wait an incredible... No, it's not Bergwerk here, my apologies. It's Stratfield Rex as he makes his way now out of that corner, and that is a painful experience, having to literally park the car off as he gets into the wall once again. I do not think that BMW is making it back without a tow cable at this rate, surely not.
No, I think there we go. He's just going to pull it up now and take the tow penalty, I think.
Whilst he's being towed back to the garage, one driver who is putting his toes to the metal, it is the case that just ahead of Tony Verschaff, we've got Paul Scott here battling side by side with what is Holman there in the run up towards Bergwerk corner. Get it right for the third time of asking, we do, and we can see that Scott on the outside here, he's going to have what is Holman coming all the way through. Oh, goodness me, and was there contact there?
I think there might have been I'll have to see a replay to be able to confirm it, but it didn't look like the BMW lost of its own accord, but we'll have to see on a replay later.
Well, we will take a look back at the replay very shortly, but Scott does continue to go racing here, albeit with a damaged BMW, and it definitely looks as though now he's struggling up the hill here, as he's got Romano chasing after him, Lucas Romano there going up the hill side by side, and he's going to have to go to the outside here as they make their way up towards the left-hander, and Romano backing out there well before the left-hander. There's no way you're going to find a way through it unless you trust the driver on the inside to give you the space, but it does mean Romano right now is vulnerable to Paul Williams by comparison, who's got Janssen all over the back of him as well. These guys all coming together in quick formation as Janssen has to back out there himself. And just take us through, Matt, in your experience, when you're battling on a circuit which is so tight and narrow and there's not really places for overtaking, what do you as a driver do in terms of, you want to get ahead of the guy in front of you, but there's not the room to do it, so how do you work around that?
You try and just basically keep your head together and try and think, well, there's these three corners coming up, and then we've come to this, for example, long straight. I can just lift a tiny bit earlier and let them by. We've had a bit of carnage.
We have indeed, and I think it looks as though we've had multiple drivers. We've got Paul Scott also parked on the side of the circuit. We're going to take a look back at that very shortly, but it looks as though we've had a number of drivers in an instant. We're just taking a look back now what happened involving Robert de Sunit. I think also Tim Koopmans was also in there. Let's take a look back. So this was moments ago, and it was, we can see, we did have what was the Mr. Sparkle Porsche involved in that incident. That was into the wall alongside a Ferrari, and a Ferrari came back across the circuit, and that's what triggered a major incident. There was a Lamborghini that managed to park up right in the middle of all that and avoid any of the carnage, and that was Koopmans' car, where he just put the anchors on and stopped himself from going into that, and everybody behind sort of seeing that as the signal to calm down. But that was a very nasty moment for multiple drivers there, and I think we've had multiple drivers jump to the pits. That's Peter Lemkins has gone to the pits. He was one of the Ferraris involved in that, and we've also had, I think it was Sam Holman and Paul Scott also involved in that incident. As now we go back to the live pictures here, and we're not quite at the end of the opening lap yet.
No, it's been a lot of excitement so far, and yes, the pack's spread out a bit, but we seem to still have little pockets of battles going on everywhere.
Oh, indeed. And whilst our drivers are making their way out, we're looking back up towards the battle right now for P10, and we've got DDD Blaming here at the head of a trio of cars. We've got Jamie, well, that's not Jamie Doyle, that's Kevin van der Silk trying to find his way past, and then behind them we've got Christad, who's also trying to get into the mix. Ooh! And by looks of things, he's gone wide there, has what was DDD Blaming. You probably saw that a little bit better than I did, Matt. What exactly happened?
He put his his driver's rear wheel on the grass, and just like I was saying about putting power down a bit too early, just spun the back wheels up.
Oh, goodness me. And with him making that spin right now, he's dropped down to P14 as we look a little bit further up. And in the battle for P4, we've got Fletcher versus Hereford versus right now, what is Hicks? Well, that's not Hicks, that's Prouting, my apologies. And they're going side by side here into the final set of corners, but Fletcher takes the initiative and Prouting backing out there. I think realising, you know what, we have 2 hours of racing, not 2 minutes of racing to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Indeed, and now as they come to the end of the first lap, our leader at the moment with an 8:14.2 to start us off is Tom Mayo, I should say, leading by 3.2 seconds ahead of Blomqvist. Meanwhile, behind him, we've got Billy Fletcher in P3, followed by Matthew Prout in P4, Oisin Herford in P5. Our top five in a little bit of a world of their own at the moment, although they haven't dropped Ben Hicks that much, to be fair, only 1.8 seconds off of our top five in P6. Jochen Siegert in P7, and Siegert really doing well right now in the AM car to make his way up to this position and hold on well. He's got Jeremy Debova chasing after him in P8, then we've got Jean-Louis Deschamps in P9, and then we've got Hakon Grebstad in P10. That's our top 10, as we're hearing Robert de Sunit has gone into the pits. We've also had Kurt van Hoenack have had a major incident somewhere out in the circuit and jumped back to the pit lane. It has not gone well for some drivers, but others it's working out really well. And as we continue to look around here, and we look a little bit further down the order, Jamie Dory right now in P12, he's got away from Verschaft, and now he's chasing down Kevin van der Silk, but he's got 4.5 seconds to chase down as the Briton right now. And for Dory, what would you say, Matt, with regards to his place right now? Because he's a bit of a no man's land, or he's entered that no man's land early. He's not close to someone ahead of him, and he's quite a way away from the guys chasing after him. Would you expect he might back it off a little bit now and focus more on the long term, or because we're only 10 minutes in, he's going to push it a little bit more?
To be honest, if I was Jamie, I'd be happy right now having just, a gap in front, a gap behind, because you can now concentrate on doing a bit of fuel saving here and there, but at the same time you can think, well, I can push here and there. You're not getting cramped up and bottled up into battle and slowing yourself down. You can just relax a bit, so to speak, and just race your own race, so to speak.
Now, I get where you're coming from with that one, and sometimes just focusing on what you can do works to your advantage. Now, we have just had it clarified to us in the YouTube chat by Andreas. I'm not going to get the surname right at all. I'm going to say Kakansen, and he'll probably correct me for it, but he was just saying that Daniel Blomqvist is a Swedish guy, not Norwegian. We'll definitely get that fixed. It's just listed as Scandinavia on our screen right now, but we'll definitely fix that nationality there. And to be fair, Blomqvist on his, I believe he didn't take part in the first of our pre-season tests at Interlagos, but he's doing very well right now, chasing after Mail just ahead. The gap 3 seconds, and staying consistent at 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I think he signed up over last weekend. Heard about it on Facebook and messaged me, like I said to everyone, if they were interested to message me. And I said, we're doing a couple of pre-season events, come and have a go and let us know what you think. And I think he signed up before even this race tonight.
Well, he's definitely looking very strong right now. And as you were saying earlier, with regards to when we're talking about Jamie Dory and now looking more towards Blomqvist, it will be the situation where here, given the fact that we've got such a long time in the race, he can start to think about managing that gap to Mail and trying to manage the race and looking at potential strategies here. Because the field has opened up and spread a little bit. We're only on to the second lap right now, but we can see the snake train of cars that runs all the way from coming out of Ehrenberg up into the compression versus the cars that are just coming onto the Nordschleife loop. And I think traffic and pit strategy here is going to be critical for our leaders in particular. They will not want to come out behind other cars, will they?
No, 100% not, because with that we were saying before, it being an easy track to make mistakes. You're not going to want to follow someone and then go for a move where it can ruin your race potentially. So I think they're going to try and fuel save a bit here and there and let everyone else try and take the pit stops first, and then they'll try and get theirs in. But it's the other question is, when do you take your tyres in this race?
Definitely. And speaking of one driver right now who's not thinking about preserving the tyres, we ride on board on the roll bar here. It's the Ferrari 488 of Mark Baker down in P22. He's trying to find a way past Navarro de Bova here as they come into the compression. He's been pushing hard for the last lap to go on the offensive, but he has to back off as they go up the hill here because he won't be able to see the blind summit, plus the fact he's got a face full of Audi R8 in front of him. But as he now makes his way into the left into right, seeing it's coming all the way down to first gear here. Looking very stable, Mark Baker right now, trying to get the move on as de Bova gets it wrong on the exit. It's going to be a drag race up into a double left here, and they're going to go side by side in the run. And sure, here de Bova's going to back out because there's only one line through the sequence of course, and he does indeed. But Baker trying to get a move on right now and trying to build up some positions as he goes sweeping there through the double left complex and pulls away from Navarro de Bova.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw again a massive improvement in Mark last season from the second half of the season, I think it was, where he started really pushing himself to get into the top 5, and then eventually, I think, did he get to top 3 at one of the last races?
I believe he did indeed in the M class, particularly it was in one of the feature races, one of the longer races, where he really laid down the law and showed that he does have the pace underneath him. Yeah,
definitely, and Mark's a really nice guy when I've been talking to him. Get on with him really well, obviously. We talk about MGs every now and again.
We're going from Baker and the MG stories to Ben Hicks right now, who seems to be jumping up and down our order. I think that Hicks may be out of this one, or we might be having some connectivity issues. But from that, behind what we're looking at, Gripstad versus Deschamps right now, as they're going up into the left-hander here just before they reach the top of the hill in the run to the carousel. And Gripstad trying to get a move on as he takes Deschamps, and now comes to the end of the long sequence before going into the heavy braking zone here. And it does look as though the McLaren driver here is trying to say the MP4 12C is here to stay. He had a bit of a rough start, but he is making some ground. And now, next person on his hit list will be Jeremy de Bova as they come roaring up towards the Caracola Carousel for what is the second time of asking. As they make their way through here, is the case that Deschamps right now has got a lot of pressure on him. He's got Kevin van der Seal in like-for-like cars in the Porsche 991s, and as they make their way, it's the case that Deschamps backs off here, and I think lets der Seal go, perhaps thinking that maybe he's nursing a little bit of a problem with the car, perhaps he's had a bit of a moment and just wants to settle himself back down, but letting the van der Seal come through quite nicely there, and not losing too much time after losing the place to Gripstad. And one of the things with the Porsche, in your experience, Matt, when you've driven the Porsche in particular, is it a little bit of a finicky car with regards to its rear end, particularly when that tyre wear starts to come out? Because I can imagine the engine being placed where it is gives it great rotation, but when you haven't got the grip, it can become quite of a handful.
Yeah, you can get slides on really easy, and you can start actually sliding everywhere on the brakes with it as well, especially on cold tyres, I found as well. But like we were saying before, it's incredible. Oh, I see a McLaren spinning around.
And that is Gripstad. He's into the wall there, just pushing it a little bit too hard, and it would happen to be at the corner, which some would refer to as YouTube corner, also known as, oh goodness me, I'm trying to remember the names off the corner off the top of my head, but getting it wrong there as we now got Jochen Siegert just, well, that's not Jochen Siegert behind him, or is it? That's the shaft behind him there, who's just having to back off the car, I think, because the yellow flag's waving and worrying that it's going to be round the corner. Will he get a face full of mangled machinery ahead of him? And he now has to deal with a wounded McLaren that's trying to nurse its way back, and I think it could be the case that Gripstad.
Oh.
And I think that's Verschaft who's got it wrong, has it?
Yeah, Verschaft missed the braking zone, I think, chasing after Gripstad, mounted the curb and jumped it and then into the wall.
Well, it definitely is noticeable, the damage there, particularly on the front right tyre, as from the driver's perspective, front left from your viewing perspective right now, ladies and gentlemen, with the fact that does look as though that front right, the suspension is not in the best of places, and it is pointing in the wrong direction, that will, as he makes his way now down into the Kleiner's carousel. And I'm hearing that a little bit further down the road, we've had a couple of incidents. Navarro de Bova's just had an instant, and well, that Audi is looking quite mangled in the front end there. We're just going to take a look back at what happened to a young Navarro de Bova as he makes his way around the circuit. This was only moments ago, and coming up into the same corner, I believe. No, it was the same corner as where we saw Grubstad get it wrong, and the exact same thing. The only difference was Navarro de Bova in the end ricocheted off of the wall, whereas it was the case with Grubstad, he was hooked into the wall there and had to reverse the car out.
Sorry, I've just noticed another incident between Lucas Romano and Jamie Dory as well.
Oh, goodness me, we'll just take a look. We've got Romano here. He looks okay, although that Ferrari doesn't look the happiest of cars. This has just happened, I presume you're saying, Matt?
Yeah, well, I've rewound a bit on my own stream, but it looked like Romano's lost the back end, spun it out, and Jamie Dory was going for an overtake on Mark Baker and just had nowhere to go but just to clip the front end of Romano.
Well, we will try and take a look back at what happened. In fact, we're going to take a look now, although I think... No, it was not the case. I don't think we're going to be seeing it even the RP Motorsports driver, though. He did have a spin and the car rolled back across the circuit there. And no, I think we're looking at something slightly a little bit later on, which is unfortunate. Would be interested to see what had happened. But coming back to the live pictures now, one driver who is now starting to build a bit of momentum is Billy Fletcher as he goes onto his third lap. He's just come out of the GP second hairpin, and as he makes his way for the Schumacher S, he's now only 4 attempts off of Daniel Blomqvist.
Yeah, I think knowing Billy, he's just going to sit there and wait for the right moment to be able to make a safe attack, so to speak.
Oh, indeed, and he's just waiting his time right now, biding, as we say hello to Sweelurb in the Twitch chat, who is saying no in his German. The YouTube corner he's referring to as Geschnellen Corner, and Geschnellen Corner strikes again. We've seen it twice so far. Indeed, it's great to have our viewers helping chip in with the corner names as well. And ladies and gentlemen, if you do know some of the corner names, feel free to shout them out, show us your knowledge, because we're not experts in the field with regards to knowing every one of the 178 corners or so that are here. That's right, isn't it? It's 178 corners that we've got to try and memorise.
I don't think I could remember even 20 of them, to be honest.
Oh, goodness me.
The exact number for this layout of the track is 170, according to my information on my iRacing.
Now, I suspect the 178, if we're adding in the sort of parts of the Mercedes arena as well, if we were adding that part of the circuit, as we come away from discussing the corner numbers, we see that DDD Vlaming has just been passed by Gareth Williams for P11. As the case, I think the Audi driver's had a little bit of an off somewhere around on the GP loop, and as he makes his way onto the Nordschleife loop right now, it is not the happiest of races from DD Vlaming so far. I think that Audi might be still nursing quite a bit of damage on it, because it looks rather loose as he goes through Sabine Schmidt curve there.
It could be. I mean, I can't see any damage on the car, but like we were saying before, it's these the Audi, the Porsche, the McLaren, excuse me, they're really nimble and great around the corner, but they're so easy to just power on a tiny bit earlier and you can lose the back end.
Oh, indeed. And whilst we're looking at Vlaming trying to make moves and chase after Gaz Williams, who's breaking away from him at a rate of knots, I think Jeremy de Bova has just... he's in a side-by-side right now as they go up into Arenberg with what is Kevin van der Silt there, but it is the case that the drivers have settled it down before they get to Arenberg corner, and we can see that it is Kevin van der Silt who's made the move there for P7, and as the challenge by DB driver now makes his way in the pursuit down into the compression here, it is the case they calm down once again. Looking a little bit further up, again we have Fletcher chasing after Blomqvist and really putting that pressure on right now. And these two, well, they've been this close for some time. They've been within 4 tenths of one another since the start of the lap. And I think Fletcher's looking for a potential move here, but Blomqvist is saying, no way, you're not coming through this early on the lap. And I think Fletcher may be forced to wait until somewhere like Bergwerk, alternatively, all the way towards the end on the Dottinger straight. I mean, to be fair, if you can time it right, if a driver makes an overtake on you in the sort of second half of the lap and it's not too far away from Dottinger and you've got that toe, surely you can come back at them and use it a bit tactically to use the long straight to make a return pass.
Definitely. I mean, to compare it to a different track, you think in Monza with the Parabolica, because if you make an overtaking today, you're basically giving the person you've just overtaken the slipstream that you could have got into the first chicane.
I did most definitely there, and that's one of the things. It's just about being tactical as well at the Nürburgring circuit as it is about being fast. And well, with Tom Male really just charging off into the distance right now. I mean, his last lap, to give you an idea, it was an 8:15.9 compared to everyone else. The second fastest lap was Billy Fletcher's 8:16.1, and then you have to go a long way. The next fastest lap, I believe, was an 8:18.7 set by Matthew Prouting. So it is the case that Tom Male and Fletcher right now seem to be in a little bit of a world of their own with regards to lap times, as we hear that Jochen Siegert has had a major moment. And in fact, Jochen Siegert is backwards on the circuit right now and trying to get the car spun. That looks to be in the run up the hill. So before coming up towards the carousel, he's had a moment and gone into the... Well, no, that's not coming up into the carousel. That's... My apologies. I'm trying to figure out where that is right now. I think that's just coming out of the carousel, in fact. He's had a major moment. Let's take a look back at what happened to the German. So it's not even near the carousel, in fact. It's as he was making his way up into the right-hander before Bergwerk, and just too high on the exit curve there, and the car went for a spin.
Yeah, a bit too much power on as well.
Well, he's now rejoined. He goes racing once again, but fortunately for him, no damage other than perhaps a little bit of flat spotting on his tyres as he goes racing. And to be fair, he's now got himself quite a bit of space on track. He's 6 seconds off the guys ahead. That's Gribstad ahead of him in P9, and Williams, who's 7.1 seconds behind. Now give him some time of day in order to just take a breather and cool down after that moment. Meanwhile, outside of what we're seeing on cameras, we're hearing that Stefan Albanese has jumped to the pits. He's had an off. We have also had Lucas Romano, go into the pits. He's had a jump to the pits. So we are now down to, I think it's 27 drivers on the lead lap or still running, although I may be a little bit inaccurate with regards to the number of drivers, but I think we do still have 27 racing at this current point in time. As really our closest battle on circuit right now appears to be Fletcher's. We're hearing that Oosterhuis has had a moment, and Oosterhuis is down in P26, and the Switchback Motorsport driver there has gone into the wall, and that does look to be on the run down towards Drachenfeld Rex as we take a look back at what happened to him. Going from the left into right here, and this is coming down into the right-hander, and I think he's just gone a bit too deep. Yeah, under the brakes, locked up the brakes, and the rear has just decided to turn him around and put him for a brief spin as he got the car recovered, and there was nobody around to worry about. But he's put the car into the wall. As we come back to live pictures, he seems to put the car into the wall a little bit later on the lap, and in fact that's in the heavy braking zone coming out of Drachenfeld Rex down into the right into left sequence. It does seem as though a lot of drivers are being caught out by the corners here, and it may be the case. What would you say, Matt? Would it be perhaps a case of memory, like what you were saying earlier on when we were riding on board with yourself, just forgetting which corners come up in the next sequence? Or is it perhaps a little bit of race pressure also in there?
I think it's just trying to remember the track, to be honest, more than race pressure in pre-season. There's no points for grabs or anything, so I think it's just going to be just forgetfulness as Billy Fletcher's run wide and lost a couple of places.
He has indeed. Well spotted there, as we see that Oystein Herford's now trying to close up to the back of him, and Fletcher's going chasing after Prouting. Well, it's a case that Fletcher really going on the war here to try and get some places back, but Herford will not want to let us go, and I think he'll want to be as close as possible to these BMWs as they make their way onto the Dottinger straight here, for the simple reason he doesn't quite have the straight line speed of the M4, but if he's able to be in that tow, he will gradually gain. He's going to get a double tow here at this distance off of both Fletcher and Prouting. They're all in the line right now, and you can see it's the German traffic jam as they make their way down the straight.
Yeah, I don't see the Audi getting up close enough, really, to be honest with you. Thinking about a move, but with the nice twisty section coming up now, I think Oystein will definitely maybe have a run onto the GP layout.
And meanwhile, as he's building up that run, potentially Prouting right now will be thinking to himself, okay, if I can potentially back Fletcher into Hereford, I'm going to buy myself some time over the course of the lap, as Prouting makes his way from the right into left, and Tom Mayle drops into what is a personal best there, an 8:15.020, an even faster lap, as we do see. I think that is Fletcher into the pits. I think Fletcher might have some damage, or just be deciding to pit early and take his first stop only 25 minutes in.
Yeah, but he might have played this right, because he might come out in that gap that he needs to be able to close the gap to Tom Mayle.
Very true, but he's going to have to be careful, because right now, in terms of the traffic coming from the circuit, I think the gap is definitely in the region of P11, P12, because we've got a massive gap between P12 and P13 building up on the Dottinger Hoa. P12 being DDD Vlaming, and P13 being Nigel Stark. You can see it's just come across that timeline as Fletcher is still in the pits. Do you know if Fletcher's up on the jacks making tyre changes, or whether it's just the case he's putting some fuel in the car?
I think he's just putting fuel in the car. I think I've not seen it go up on the jacks just yet. Oh, he's up on the jacks. He's getting his tyres.
So here's the case that as he's now up on the jacks, meanwhile it's DDD Vlaming who comes on through to go up into P11. Then we have got Nigel Stockel as the next driver in this sequence to come through as he makes his way out of the final corner into that timeline. Nigel Stock's into the pits, interestingly enough, so he's decided to take a pit stop here, and I think Stock's actually had a moment with the wall somewhere because the front of that BMW does not look as though it's in sellable condition right now. And when I say that, it's regards to all the front panels being out of shape on the what is the left hand side from your perspective, ladies and gentlemen, the right hand side from the driver's perspective. But meanwhile, as they make their way down, it is the case that Fletcher has emerged out of the pits in what is P14. He's got Mark Baker on his outside here, but I think he may have just timed this one right, albeit he does have Williams ahead of him that he'll look to get past as soon as possible. I think Williams has not had the best run out of turn 2.
Yeah, I think he's just had to wait a bit longer to put the power on to make sure he didn't spin it out. But Billy, at the same time, he's going to have really cold tyres on now, so is he going to go for a move and risk it?
I think he is, as they make their way out of turn 4 and they head down towards 5, towards the second of the hairpins on the GP loop. And as he makes his way down here, I think Williams realises he's not in the same race as Fletcher and doesn't put too much of a fight up on here, because I think Williams is more interested in the fact he's got Baker chasing after him. But that is Fletcher up into P13. The next driver in his way is Janssen, who is 3.7 seconds up the road. And if he can pass Janssen quickly, he's then got a 23.5 second gap to DDD Vlaming ahead of him, and that would buy him plenty of space to simply focus on putting in a good lap or a good couple of laps, as whereas everybody else up ahead of him has yet to pit. He's the first of our pitters, and it is the case that for Fletcher right now he's going to be going some. And what would you say in terms of running that clear and how much time it could be worth out on this circuit, Matt?
Well, if he was doing 8:15.1 his quickest he's done, I think. 8:16.1, sorry. And if Blomqvist was holding him up by any chance or anything like that, you can now find that maybe half a second that he couldn't find before because of the traffic. So we'll have to see if this gamble pays off.
Oh, most definitely. And for those wondering with regards to Blomqvist's lap times, it is the case that our P2 man lapping at the moment in the 8:19s. His last lap was his best lap in 8:19.1. So I think it is the case that Fletcher has gone for the space to try and give himself that breathing room, as you're saying, Matt, and it's confirmed in terms of his positioning right now. Meanwhile, further down the order in terms of other drivers who've had pit stops, well, it was the case that we did see what was Nigel Stock having the pit stop to reshape the car, and he's got the repair work done to the front end of that car right now. He's come out in P22. As Jamie Dory, meanwhile, I think has had a bit of a moment. In fact, Dory's into the wall there, and he's just reversing the car out of the wall. I think that's in the run, just building up the run down towards Flugplatz. As we can see, that Audi is not looking to be the nicest of cars right now. That rear wing is quite heavily crumpled.
Yeah, just rewatching the replay, I think he just carried a tiny bit too much speed in, and with the damage to the rear wing, he's not had the rear downforce to hold it.
Indeed, we had the rear wing damage, as you say, before the incident. We're just playing it back right now on our cameras, and we can see, yep, the rear is just completely gone. And as a result, fortunately for him, not going into the wall to further complicate the damage to the rear of the car, and in fact, getting that car just tapped up against the wall to avoid other drivers coming through. But it does look as though Jamie's having a difficult day at the office right now. As meanwhile, one driver who's enjoying his day at the office is Mark Baker. He's chasing after Williams right now and going on the offensive here as they make their way in the run up the hill. And as they come out the compression right now, I think Baker's going to have to back it off briefly, but he'll be looking quite strong in the run down towards Bergwerk in the near future, at least coming up towards Trackfield Rex before that, as he goes chasing after Williams right now. And when you're in equal machinery, obviously we're running fixed setups here. Is it the case that these cars are completely identical, or are there slight adjustments that you as a driver can make to the car?
The only thing that you can change on the car with it being fixed set is brake bias, and that's it, and that can make you find maybe 2-3 tenths. But I mean, I think they bring the change in it at the end of this season, so you can adjust ABS and traction control on fixed setup. But I haven't heard an official. As Mark Baker goes round, I think he just clipped the outside grass there, and well, as we all say, he was on throttle. It's just spun the back end round.
Oh, that's very unfortunate for Baker, and going from one close battle to another, and McLaren is on the charge, and that is Gribstad, who's now got past Deschamps in the run up the hill, heading all the way up towards the carousel, and he's got the move done versus Deschamps in a side-by-side battle as he now makes his way into the heavy braking zone here, and it does look as though Gribstad really making that McLaren work here, and taking the fight to Jean-Louis Deschamps, who, whilst Deschamps hasn't had the most eventful race, you have to say, Deschamps is putting in a good effort behind.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we saw what Deschamps could do last season, and he's he's a fighter. He doesn't give up. He'll practice as much as anyone, and it really shows on race day, to be honest. And the times that I've had a battle with him in the feature race when I was ahead of him due to the reverse grid, he always was fair. He never put me at risk, so to speak, of ruining possibly both our races, and I've got a lot of respect for him.
Well, speaking of respect, we've just had come in to our chat. We've had Peter Kupiers saying Diddy D. Vlaming, just for reference, is the son-in-law of Jeremy DeBova. Well, I did not know that there was the family connection there, as we are seeing the McChallenge by DB driver making his way around the circuit right now. It does seem as though the DeBova clan are coming full force into this series. They started off strong in Season 1, and Season 2, you have to say, we're anticipating a lot from them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they're again as practicing as much as anyone. Again, they're all fair, and Navarro proving that just the experience of racing with everyone and learning from his teammates, his family. I think it was Canada. He got the sprint win and the pole position.
It was indeed. He put in a phenomenal drive, took the pole position, took the sprint win, and just never gave it up. Unfortunately, the feature didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, but young Navarro put in a phenomenal drive as he's dropping down the field right now. In fact, in a very close side-by-side battle, but I think he's been in the wall before the carousel, and in fact, he's had to jump out the carousel. That Audi is not looking a happy car, but the youngster doing a very good job right now as ahead of him. We do have Sam Holman battling with Paul Scott, and these two coming very close together out on the circuit as they make their way now up the hill, and before they start going into the long downhill run, I should say. And the Mr. Sparkle machine is sparkling right now, albeit I think sparkling a bit too much there by going that high on the apex curb, going a bit too high. And as he makes his way now in the descent down the hill, chasing after Paul Scott, I think he might be trying to size up and move onto the dot in Ohio. We've also heard just off camera that Tony Verschaft has jumped to the pits. He's had a major moment. And as we continue to look around here, is the case I'm seeing in the chat. We've had that confirmation with respect to what is Ben Hicks. We've got Ed Knight there saying in the YouTube chat that I think it's the case that Ben Hicks is going to need a bag of old 50p's ready for the internet box. Good joke there. That's very unfortunate though with regards to his internet. We hope that doesn't happen, of course, in the main series, because that's the one thing you don't want is a disconnection mid-race.
No, I think we've all been there and experienced that, and it's the worst I've ever had was the GT3 Fix Series at Spa. I think it was last season on iRacing. I was winning by 31 seconds, and on the last lap, just about to come into the bus stop, my internet dropped out. So to say I was a bit upset is an understatement. Oh,
most definitely. But speaking of understatements right now, could it be the case that Billy Fletcher makes the understatement of the century in terms of that early pit stop? He's making his way down the dot in a hurt, but Tom Mayle is already coming out the pits here, so it looks as though that initial pit stop has not worked. But Mayle did not go up on the jacks during his pit stop. He's just put fuel in the car here, so it looks as though Mayle is come back out. He's come back out in P5. We've also seen that Jeremy DeBova, Jean-Louis Deschamps, we've also got Kevin van der Silk, we've got Jochen Seeger into the pits. We've got a lot of drivers coming into the pit lane early after only what is effectively, by my calculations, 4 laps of the circuit. We're getting pit stops in the opening 30 minutes.
Is it the opening 30 minutes? I've seen 40 minutes here.
I've got 34 minutes on my timer right now.
Yeah, so it'll be... Yeah, I'm seeing 38 on mine. On the iRacing elapsed time, but anyway. Yeah, but you've got to think, with the restrictions I've got on the fuel loads at 70%, are you going to have enough fuel in the tank to go that 9 more minutes of a lap? So to me, it's about the right time.
I can definitely see your points there, and I think as a result that right now, in terms of taking that pit stops, we are seeing a lot of interchange down in the pits, and Jochen Seeger has come out in P11 when all was said and done. He's chasing after Robert de Sunik as he makes his way out to turn 2. Behind him, however, he's got Paul Williams, who is on the offensive here, and Paul Williams, it should be pointed out, unless I'm very much mistaken, has yet to actually make a pit stop here. So Williams deciding to go longer than most. He's staying out for at least one more lap here, and the Team Tetra Rouge driver at this point in number 107 car, surely he's going to be in a high fuel map in order to save the fuel, or is that Ferrari just that good on fuel?
I'll be honest, I haven't done a long fuel run on the Ferrari, but I think it's certainly one of the better cars on the fuel. From when we're on board, everyone's got the little dashes, and every car has got how much fuel you use per lap, and I think the Ferrari was 0.3 or 0.4 less than every other car I use.
Goodness me, well that is highly efficient as we ride on board here with Williams, taking it very smooth right now for the driver who's been the longest there out on circuit as he follows Jochen Seeger around. Of course, I think Jochen Seeger's just got a little bit of a pace advantage over the Ferrari driver here, but going long this way, and Williams has kept himself out of trouble. He's really been one of those drivers who's not been involved in any instance. It could be the case he might gain a number of positions for the opening pit window by simply being Mr. Consistency.
Yeah, sorry, I was just sending a message then. My co-host has been messaging me about a few things that need rectifying, so I apologise. Who are we talking about?
We're talking about Williams, Paul Williams here in the Ferrari, who's yet to pit. I was saying that he might just gain places through consistency and being the last guy to stop.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, he'll have the lightest car of everyone if everyone else has pitted and he hasn't, and hopefully it can show into a bit of pace on the track.
Oh, most definitely. And speaking about your co-host, I think that might be one, Mr. Mark Sykes. We can see him. He's in the Facebook chat saying the Mark Sykes Designs outfit is in full effect tonight. Indeed, we've got a number of classic liveries as done by Mark Sykes on these cars. And I believe Mark Sykes Designs, if you are looking for what is a fantastic iRacing livery, then look no further, because you've got multiple Mark Sykes Designs liveries out here on circuit today. And, well, we do know that Mark loves a lot of detail and a lot of effort in his liveries, and they are absolutely cracking ones, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Oh, definitely. I think Mark's done all of my liveries, and he's done mine and Billy Fletcher's liveries for the BMWs for this season as well. And to be fair, his prices are absolutely brilliant as well. He's a nice guy. He'll send you development photos, so it's not just you tell him what you want and he does it. He'll send you snippets of stuff and say, do you like this? Do you want me to change this? He's one of the best ones I've ever used.
Oh, well, we could, I think, talk about the liveries all evening long, but unfortunately we must come back to the racing, and good racing that we're coming back to here as Dirt Bounce is going on the offensive versus DD Vlaming for P14 as they make their way out of Ehrenberg and down now towards the compression here. And as they come roaring down the hill, it does look as though the Ferrari driver is getting very close, and Vlaming's going defensive here into the compression, which you wouldn't normally see. You'd normally have the confidence to know that a driver behind is not going to go for the move, but I think DD Vlaming is struggling, and he actually goes a little bit deep under braking here, and Bounce is starting to come alive here as the RP Motorsports driver as he makes his way now in the hunt down towards the double left-hand sequence here. I think we could be looking at a potential move from the Ferrari driver, although Deschamps is just up the head of the road as well, and Deschamps running quite off the pace right now after taking his pit stop. Could Bounce be looking at 2 moves in 1 lap?
Quite possibly. We don't know if Deschamps have took tyres and he's just waiting for him to warm up a bit, because usually that Porsche around these few corners is one of quicker cars.
Oh, indeed. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled on that. Looking a little bit further down, I have heard that Adrian Kregel did go into the pits quite recently, but apart from Kregel, I think most drivers now have taken their opening pit stop. The only drivers yet to... Oh, goodness me! And Dirt Bounce there, just being able to avoid DD Vlaming, putting it into the wall there in the downhill braking zone, and Vlaming going straight into the wall, and then getting racing once again now. I think he's bounced out the wall and gone racing, but it is the case that the Audi driver there, that Audi now is not in a good state of repair, and we're just going to take a look back at that instant. As we ride on board here with the Audi driver carrying a lot of momentum, and the car went wide, and I think after going up onto the grass, yeah, his braking zone just simply disappeared away from him, and in the end going straight into the wall and having to get the car back together. Fortunately, hitting the wall at an angle to bouncing back onto the circuit there, but that Audi now has got a lot of damage to the car, as Mark Baker has also had a moment. at the same corner, and that Ferrari is definitely in the wars right now. As we can see, the whole front side, the front right hand side from the driver's perspective, is mangled, and that does look as though that's steering rack damage on the front right hand tyre as well.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, they're so fragile on the front end of these, you can just not, I won't say so much touch a wall, but let's say you have a moment like, is it Divalamic who just went to the World of Champs?
Yes, Divalamic.
Divalamic. If he'll have steering damage 100% from that because of the way that he's hit the angle of everything. As you saw on the live on board before the qualifying, I had it and I was at 90 degrees trying to keep it in a straight line. It becomes off-putting.
Oh, it is very off-putting. I can appreciate that in terms of when you're trying to hold the steering wheel at an angle and then you've got to correct it every time. And one thing that should be pointed out in terms of pit stops are coming away from damaged cars to cars that have decided not to damage their race time so far by taking a pit stop. It is the case that Blomqvist doing a very good job, although Prouting is starting to reel him in. Prouting the last lap was half a second faster and half a second over the course of 170 or so corners. That is not much in terms of half second faster, but it's still something. But it does look as though our top four who have yet to pit are all building up towards pit stops right now, you have to say, as then we've got Tom Mayle who is down in P5, and well, he's not far off our top four right now, would be expected to retake the lead. And then you've got Gareth Williams followed by what is there Billy Fletcher in P7, and Fletcher is then, well, we've got Gareth Williams who has yet to pit, and it's Fletcher who is the next driver who has pitted. But let's just wait and see as our top four, where we do have Blomqvist coming into the pits immediately. What about Prouting? He's in, Hereford's in, they're all coming in our top four here. We've got Grevstad who's a little bit further back. He's 18.2 seconds back on the top three, but he still forms part of this top four who've yet to pit. And as he makes his way through the right into left right now, will we see the Luminous Racing Machine make its way in, or will it go out for one more lap? Which dare he do it? No, he comes into the pits. And I think that does mean that Tom Mayle now, as he makes his way through the right into left composition, he is going to retake the lead here, unless there is a shock surprise in terms of those pit stops. As we also see there, Williams coming in, but Mayle retakes the lead then. 42 minutes this race have cleared out the 2-hour race, and he has taken a pit stop already, but he only put fuel in, he didn't change the tyres. And now the big question mark will be, where is Billy Fletcher in all of this? Well, we are hearing that he's making his way around down Dottinahua, and we are seeing it right now. And it is the case that I think for Fletcher, he may find himself coming out into the traffic here of multiple drivers as he comes roaring down the straight. We'll just wait and see as we hear that Austin Hereford's come out of the pits. Blomqvist has come into the pits as well, so it is a situation right now where I'm
just going to say from the pits, I'm just keeping an eye on all the pit stops. Prouting is taking tyres, so will Billy get ahead of him? Yeah, Billy's going to get ahead of him.
And we can see there that Grubstad has just made his way out of the pits, and it's the case. It's going to be side by side, but Fletcher's done it. So Fletcher's up into P4. But Hereford and Blomqvist have yet to take their tyres, whereas Fletcher definitely has taken some tyres. Whether it's just the two fronts or all four, we'll have to wait and see. Or it's the two rears, alternatively. You could confuse me as he makes his way down towards turn 3. As he makes his way on down here, further down, we are hearing that Williams is now into the pits for his first scheduled stop here and going long, following what the leaders are doing, but that's going to drop him a few places. As we see, Jochen Siegert's already up into P11, and John Lee Deschamps now goes up into P12, and Dirt Bounce into P13. And to be fair, Bounce is closing up on Deschamps. He's closed up by 3 seconds on that last lap.
Yeah, I think he's just finding his rhythm in this Ferrari since his pit stop. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not on the back of him by probably turn 90.
Yeah, I'd say about that. About halfway around the lap, he should be within the attacking zone here. And I think Deschamps may be just trying to nurse the car at the moment and perhaps not feeling comfortable where the car is, as we're hearing that Arjan Kregel has jumped to the pits. And that is not good news for Kregel. He's just had a major moment, which we'll take a look back at now. So this was only moments ago, and this was Kregel making his way, I believe, up the hill here. Now, this is not normally somewhere where we'd see a car of a moment. I think he's already picked up damage. In fact, he's had to park the car because there's something very wrong with that car, and he's just parked it up and said, you know what, this is not happening anymore, and Kregel has been towed back to the pits. As meanwhile, Dirt Bounce now goes on the pursuit of Jean-Louis Deschamps here and losing out on the GP loop. He's lost 0.3 of a second on the GP loop. Now as they go on to the Nordschleife loop, this is where he's going to have those opportunities to close up. as he makes his way charging around the circuit. And meanwhile, just looking a little bit further down, we do have Paul Scott here in P14, who's in a bit of a no man's land. He's not close enough to Dirt Bounce. He's 14.7 seconds down, but at the same time with Stock he's 21.8 seconds ahead. I think just focusing on running his own race right now, as the closest drivers on circuit are Robert De Sunik and also Gareth Williams right now. De Sunik in P10, Williams in P9, and De Sunik is going to go on the offensive versus the BMW driver very soon as they start to make their way around the opening part of the Nordschleife loop and get ready to head up towards Flugplatz curve as they come through the right into left sequence here. One more right into left sequence, and then they've got that long run, and this is where the Porsche driver seems to excel. He seems to excel at those rotation moments where he needs to get on the power nice and early, as the Porsche does, and now they've got the long charge through Flugplatz and up towards Ehrenberg here. And what do you reckon, Matt? Do you think we could see the Porsche try and spring one on the BMW up towards Ehrenberg, or is it too far?
I think it's a bit too far at the minute, especially when he runs wide like that.
Oh, goodness me, he's going to come across the curb there, and very well caught by De Sunik, to be fair, to keep the car pointing straight. But that was a very close moment. I think that might have been a bit of a Code Brown moment.
Oh, definitely.
And meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Blomqvist has had a moment, because looking at BMW in P2, that car is not in a happy place. In fact, the whole bonnet's come off of the P2 driver's car. Let's take a look back at what's happened. So this was coming up through the compression. Does he simply go too heavy on the apex curve? He does go onto it. It doesn't unsettle the car too much. He just misses his braking point, goes up onto the grass and straight into the wall there. And Blomqvist having a major moment, and it is the case. That BMW now is going to be really in a nasty place, as we're hearing that Dirt Bounce has also had a moment around the circuit. In fact, he's jumped to the pits, has bounced, and he's parked up there. I think there may have been a moment between himself and another driver. We're hearing Grubstad's also had a run off the circuit somewhere, but he's much further up the road from Bounce. So I think Bounce has jumped to the pits, but it does look as though a lot of drivers are being caught out once again by the circuit, and we're only 46 minutes into the 120-minute race.
Yeah, I'm rewatching a few of these. Bounce has lost it on his own, just being a bit too hasty on the brakes, and Rebstad has done a Matt, as I'm going to start calling it, where I can't remember what corner number it is, the really sharp blind left-hander, and has just cut across the circuit.
Oh, that would be up and Aldenauer Forst, and he's just, as you say, just cut straight across by missing his braking point and decided to take the rallycross line. But as our drivers now continue to make their way around, it does seem as though a lot of drivers are settling into some sort of rhythm here. The only real battle that is now starting to build up is Hereford going after Blomqvist here, but we'd expect this given the fact that Blomqvist is nursing a car which has seen its battles into the walls. And I think the full-sim racing driver here is going to have no problem in trying to make this pass as they come up the hill. Surely it's going to be the case that Blomqvist is not going to defend this as they come roaring up. In fact, Hereford goes to the inside here. This should be a pretty straightforward move.
Yeah, definitely. I was about to say, I think Blomqvist will just let off the throttle a tiny bit and let him go.
Indeed he does there as they make their way for the tricky left-hander, the blind left-hander, and as they come up to the end of the run up their hill here, it would be that situation now where Hereford's got to keep pushing because he does have Fletcher trying to chase after him. And do keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that Hereford and Mail, Blomqvist and also Grubstad have yet to change any tyres on the car, whereas Fletcher has changed tyres. We're not sure how many he changed when he went up on the jacks, but he has changed some of his tyres. As meanwhile, you're looking at the P2 driver right now who makes his way through the carousel and now comes charging out there and now moves on to what is effectively the start of the downhill portion of the circuit. As meanwhile, a little bit further back, we have had a number of retirements in this race. I do think that Dirt Bounce is in the pits right now doing repair work, and it's the case that Peter Lemkins has parked up, and we have lost a number of drivers from this race as we are now down to approximately somewhere in the region of about 23 drivers, including Bounce in the pits, but we have lost a number. I think also Lucas Romano has parked up, and he's been there for some time. He's in P29 listed, but he has not left the pit lane for a sizable amount of time. So 23 drivers currently registered as still in this race effectively, and your race leader at the moment is Tom Mayle after 48.5 minutes, coming up to the 49th minute right now, and it does look as though the Lamborghini Huracan driver seems to be in a rhythm and is absolutely flying as he makes his way through Flansgarden Zwei, and it does not look as though anything's going to hold him back.
Not unless he has a moment or anything like that, but from what we've been seeing of him, I might start calling him Mr. Consistent.
Oh most definitely, and he really is pushing it to the absolute limit right now in terms of just keeping that car nice and smooth as he makes his way through the Kleiner carousel. And in terms of lap times, well, his last lap was a 9-minute flat because of the fact he had the pit stop, but his best lap of the race has been an 8:15.02, and nobody else has come anywhere near close to that in terms of going into the 8:15s. We've yet, as far as we're minus Billy Fletcher hitting the 8:16s at one point, we've yet to see anybody else hit an 8:16, let alone an 8:15, as we see Mal charging down the Dottenhauer right now and just seems to be in a bit of a world of his own. But of course he does have that long pit stop coming up at some point where he will need to change the tyres on the car, and perhaps that could see the tide turn in Fletcher's favour.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, what Billy might be thinking now is everyone else is on old tyres, but I'd say maybe 15-20 minutes they'll all start hitting the cliff, as we all call it, where the tyres will start going off, they'll start losing grip, where Billy then can make that time up. But the big but is you've got to think, when everyone else takes tyres, Billy's tyres are going to start going off at the end of the race. So it's going to be, if Billy can get past everyone, he's going to have to defend as best he can and try and hope his tyres hold out.
Oh, most definitely. But as the tyre wear situation will play its part as the race goes on here, it does look as though, in terms of struggling, Blomqvist really struggling for the top end with the damage on that BMW, damage to the engine most likely here, and I think he'll be coming into the pits soon because he can't keep running around with that car because of the damage he's got. It's going to be costing him time, and in fact, he's into the pits for a fast repair.
Yeah, we all said it. Sorry, that's going to be the yawn then.
As he makes his way in, meanwhile, we've got Fletcher who comes on to take P3 now and goes charging after Oisin Hereford. And to give you a comparison of the top three, it looks like our race leader, Tom Mount, well, that last lap was an 8:14.84, but it's not come up as his best lap, so I'm wondering if there was a little bit of a track limits moment there on the lap. But Mount is absolutely flying still. Oisin Hereford, meanwhile, that was an 9:08.36, but keeping in mind, of course, that he has had the pit stop on his last lap. And then Billy Fletcher matching Mail practically with an 8:14.83 of his own, and that's gone purple. That is the fastest lap from anybody that hasn't picked up a penalty over the course of the lap, and Fletcher is going the fastest of anyone now.
Yeah, I think he might have preserved his tyres on that first stint, and he's now starting to think, right, now's the time to push. I've got the fuel, I've got the tyres, now's the time I need to gain.
Oh, definitely. As meanwhile, we're hearing that Robert de Sunik has come into the pits. In fact, he's parked up there, and Johnny Deschamps has now taken P10 as he makes his way through the opening chicane hairpin sequence. And meanwhile, a little bit further up the road, I have to say, now we've got Matthew Prouting chasing after Jeremy De Bover here as they make their way through the Schumacher S's. And Prouting trying to make a recovery out of this drive after a difficult start. And he's going after De Bover, and I do not think De Bover's got much in the tank with regards to that Audi R8. I think he's hoping he can hold Prouting off before they get onto the Nordschleife loop, because after that, as we're hearing that the younger member of the De Bover family's had a major incident out on circuit, it's Jeremy De Bover right now. If he can hold off that BMW M4 before he gets onto the Nordschleife loop, he's going to have that BMW M4 behind him for a sizable amount of time, really up until they get up towards Ehrenberg. But what happened to De Bover, Matt? Have you seen what's happened?
I'm just watching it now. He's just, the YouTube corner's caught him out. Run wide onto the gravel trap, and he's just lost the back end and give a little bit of a love tap to the wall, and you've got away with it, to be honest.
Well, we're just playing it back right now. Indeed, as you say, they're just running wide, and that little love tap there, that could have spelled all the difference between having to get the car repaired and just having to worry about nursing some slight aerodynamic damage. But he's definitely going to have that in mind right now. And I have to ask you, in a driver's shoes, when you make a mistake at a particular corner, as we see Navarro De Bover getting it very wrong, in fact, as he's coming down through Flansgarden Savai and getting it completely wrong and mangling the rear end. What I was going to say, how does that disturb you as a driver in terms of your sequence when you make an initial mistake? Does it put you off the circuit or make the circuit seem scarier to you? Or is it one of those situations where you just buckle down and say, you know what, I've had one off, it's not going to spell my entire run of the circuit?
Every driver will take a different perspective into that. I mean, to me, if I had an incident to one corner, the next couple of laps I'm a bit wary. I'm thinking, I know what I've done wrong, to try and just settle myself back down and focus again. But to some people, like you say, it's just, oh, I've made a mistake, and you carry on, so to speak.
Well, talking about mistakes, make no mistake, Prouting is now up into P5 versus Jeremy Debova, and next up on the list to take on Jeremy Debova is Blomqvist, who, as he makes his way out of Ehrenberg corner here, is getting very close to the back of Jeremy Debova as they come roaring down towards the compression. Prouting's already off into the distance and making haste as they make their way down to the compression here. It is the case that Blomqvist really having to push hard right now and trying to get into the, trying to get into a fighting position, but there's no way through in the run up the hill. It's going to be the case he's going to have to wait as he goes for Adenauer Forced, and as they make their way through the sequence of corners here, I think there's going to be a potential move on just a little bit later on, and perhaps after the double left-hand sequence here we're going to see it, but Blomqvist really starting to put the momentum on after having to take that fast repair. And where would you say he's going to go for it? Would he go for it coming out of these corners, or will he wait a little bit later?
I think he'll wait a tiny bit later yet. It's a bit tight and technical, and he'll know the Audi will be quicker out the corner exits.
Oh, most definitely. I know if anybody can make that Audi rotate, it's going to be Debova as he makes his way now in towards Drachenfeld Rex. And as they make their way down into the right-hander here, we're going to see the difference between the two drivetrains, where the Audi can just take such a tighter line. But Blomqvist, to be fair, does not hesitate on running the same line as the Audi right now as they make their way into that heavy braking zone, just taking their time through. As they make their way out of the sequence of corners now and really start to move on to the second half of the circuit. Excuse me. It is a situation that these guys battling one another. We are hearing a bit further up the road as Billy Fletcher had a moment. He just lost the position. He's lost the position to Gripstad.
And he's got a bit of front end damage.
We'll just take a brief moment as to what's happened to Fletcher, but he's lost out massively, and I'm not seeing anything on my tracker to say that he's been into the war or anything along those lines. So if you're seeing some front end damage on the car, I'm going to agree with you there.
He's where Jochen spun out earlier. He's done exactly the same thing as Jochen. He's rode the curve a bit too high and accelerated a bit too much too early. And knowing Billy, I think he'll be a bit annoyed with himself for that.
Well, definitely, he was on with very good momentum. And speaking about drivers getting it wrong, earlier on we didn't talk about it, but Paul Williams, who was at the time running in around P14, P15, he's now dropped all the way down to what, well, in fact, he's in P14 still. It was a bit higher up the order, I should say, before the incident happened. Paul Williams had a bit of a moment earlier on. We're just going to take a look. And this was on the GP loop, interestingly enough. He had a bit of a moment coming down into the turn 5 hairpin and under braking. Now, I think he's missed his braking point and tried to stop. No, in fact, he got the braking point, but he just simply locked up the brakes and the rear end stepped out on him. But fortunately for him, it was not a major moment. He was able to get the car resumed and go racing once again at the cost of 2 positions. So the Ferrari driver there having a bit of a moment, and we'd normally expect moments to occur on the Nordschleife loop, not on the GP loop, but it does look as though we've seen the GP loop claim its first victim.
Yeah, but you think, could you not relax? Some drivers relax a bit too much, thinking, oh, it's only the GP layout. Everyone knows it. It's an easier layout compared to the Nordschleife. It could be just a brief moment of not fatigue. What's the word I'm thinking of? Lack of concentration.
Oh, indeed. I think sometimes just being a little bit complacent coming through some of the corners when you think it's nice and easy. But meanwhile, we look back up towards the further up the field. We can see Tom Male right now just keeping it nice and smooth there as he roars his way through the Kleiner carousel. And then a bit further down the order from the top, but in the top 10 still, we do have Jeremy Debova, who has Gareth Williams chasing after him here. And as they make their way through the downhill section, they go into a YouTube corner very shortly. And as they come through the right-hander, it is the situation, or if we're going to call the corner properly, they're coming through Geschnellen corner, and as they make their way through the right-hander, now come through the final set of sequences before they come into Flatsgarden Eins, it is the case that as they come roaring down, it does look as though Williams is on the push and is trying to find a way to get closer and closer to build up towards the Dottener straight. But he is really building up, and I think Debova here putting in a good drive, but just a bit vulnerable compared to the BMWs around him.
Yeah. Like we were saying before, that the Audi's brilliant in the technical sections, but when it comes to the high-speed power straights or power moments on the track, the BMW and the Ferrari are, in my opinion, a lot quicker.
Well, I think we're going to see that start to materialise as we do ride on board here with Gareth Williams as he makes his way into the small right-hander before the run onto Dotanahoa, the right-hander where you don't want to get too close to the apex curve because you'll get launched off the circuit. But as they make their way out here, it's a very good run from Williams and it's a good run from DeBova, but now it's all about that top end speed, that BMW plus the slipstream here, and the BMW driver is going to have both as he makes his way down. DeBova puts the car in the middle of the road before pulling over to the right here, I think trying to send the signal, look, if you're going to do it, go to the inside. And as they drag race their way now, it is the case that Williams has got the overspeed. He makes his way on past. As we look to the exterior cameras here, I think Williams is just going to simply take that inside line and make DeBova go a long way around if he's going to try and come back, as they now make their way into the final part of the straight and come into the heavy braking zone here. And I think it's going to be a simple pass, and it's Gareth Williams up into P7 as they make their way to the end of the lap. As they went through. So go on.
No, I was just about to say, as we all saw them, I watched it from the gearbox of Jeremy DeBova. The straight line speed advantage of that BMW in the tow is unrivaled in the GT3 class, I think.
Oh, definitely. And also one other thing that's unrivaled about the BMW is that front end look, particularly the front end grille.
Yeah, it's a bit big, isn't it, shall we say?
Oh, most definitely. I think it's one of those Marmite cars, you either love it or you hate it. Personally, for me, I kind of like it on a GT3 car. Less so when I see the new M4s driving around on the street, but when I see it on the GT3, I can't help but smile. I think that thing has got quite a beastie engine underneath it.
Yeah, it's got quite a little bit of character to it, doesn't it?
Oh, most definitely. But it's going from one character in the form of the BMW to another character out on circuit. I am hearing that Jamie Dory has had a bit of a moment, and as a result now, as he makes his way down through Flensgaard and Zwei, it is the case that the NXTGEN Racing driver with a very, very damaged Audi. It looks as though he's got damage at the front, the rear, the side, you name it, he's broken something on the car.
Yeah, it definitely looks like he's struggled to keep it in a straight line. It's a bit twitchy and not happy, I think the word I was thinking of is.
Oh, definitely.
But he's doing well to keep it going, to be honest, at speed as well.
He is, and speed going from one driver who's had a moment to another. Navarro DeBova has just had a moment and has jumped to the pits as Dory gets it wrong there for the right-hander and goes into the wall. And I think he's going to get the car recovered, but I do not think it's going to be a case of doing another lap in that car. It's into the pits and for some fresh repair work. As meanwhile, Navarro DeBova, for those wondering what has happened to the Belgian, let's take a look back. So this was only moments ago before he jumped to the pits, and that was coming out of Bergwerk corner and starting to make his way up the hill. And I think he's had a moment at Bergwerk because he went off track there and he's decided to park the car up whilst he's got the space on the circuit to do so and jump back to the pits. So as we now return to live cameras here, it is a situation whereby for Navarro DeBova it has not been a good day at the office. But meanwhile, in terms of good days at the office, Jeremy DeBova doing a reasonable job right now, albeit he's lost the place to Williams, but of course that was down Dotanahoa on the last lap. I think for DeBova, he's just getting his head down and focusing on what he can achieve right now, which is definitely a good top 10 finish if he keeps this momentum up.
Yeah, and definitely, I think it'll be a P3 in class as well.
Definitely, so that'd be in the Pro-Am class, and well, the other Pro-Am drivers, you'll have to confirm who they are to me, Matt, because I haven't quite got them on the screen.
No, it's Matthew Prouting in first in the Pro-Ams and Daniel Bluntfist in second currently. Jeremy DeBova third, Deschamps fourth, and Paul Williams in fifth. I think. No, Paul Williams is in the CDA lobby. This is where it's getting confusing for me now because I've got two different lobbies to run. But yeah, currently I know he's P3 at the minute anyway.
Well, he's gone.
Yeah, every class is provisional at the minute. We are announcing the classes at this weekend, I think. No, Mark, you'll put a comment in the chat if I'm wrong.
Speaking about Mark Sykes then going to another Mark in the form of Mark Baker, I think the GP Loop has just claimed another victim, and that is in the form of Mark Baker, who's into the wall there, coming out of what was, unless I'm very much mistaken, coming out of the what would be turn 12 if we were racing on the World Endurance Circuit, and that alone, as he makes his way out towards Vito, what's happened to Mark Baker? Already that Ferrari had quite a bit of damage on the car, and as he's gone into the right-hander there, it is the case he's been too high up on the apex curb, and the car has just simply been snatched by the curb and pulled to the inside. So he wasn't quite into the wall, he just pulled it up there to get it off the racing circuit. But Mark Baker's race, which started off quite strong, has gone a bit downhill right now, but he'll try and bring that back as he is trying to take that very heavily damaged Ferrari around another lap of the Nordschleife loop here, and I think that is a risk. Well, if he's going to take it and he's going to master it here, he's got Stephen Holman closing up to him right now. Oh, it's not Stephen Holman, Sam Holman closing up to the back of him right now, and I think the Porsche driver would politely like Mark Baker to move out the way rather than be in front of him, given the relative pace difference to the two of them.
Yeah, and I mean, we all can understand that a damaged car will hold you up on pace, and I think he'll be wanting to get past him and get after Paul Williams.
Indeed, and Paul Williams is only the best part of 3 seconds up the road from this pair, as we do continue to look at Holman right now. These two being the closest out on the circuits. We're hearing Fletcher's had a brief off track only moments ago, but as they make their way through Flugplatz and now head up towards Nurburgring, here it is the case the Porsche driver is closing at a significant rate of knots, and as we ride on board here with the 991 driver, he's looking for it up into Nurburgring. Will he go for it into left-hander? I think he's going to. He's going to be doing it risky. No, he backs out and he waits for a little bit later on here, but he can't stay here forever, and as Baker goes very deep under braking there, it is the case that Holman continues to push, but he's not able to find a way through right now. Baker getting that car, that Ferrari, through the corner quite nicely, and as they go into the compression, I think it may be the case that Baker, he's found a way to nurse that car around the circuit.
Yeah, I think everyone will understand when I say when you're driving a damaged car, after about 2 or 3 laps on a normal circuit, you get used to when to brake, how it steers, and when you can power on and stuff, but you don't realise until you start looking at your lap times how much time you actually are losing.
Indeed, and as they make their way now in towards the double left-hand sequence here, Baker taking a lot of momentum in there, and I think Holman was trying to make a little feint to the inside there to try and put Baker off, but Baker not perturbed, but he's had a very poor run there out of the right-hander as they come down the hill here. Holman's going to go for the classic move on the inside and gets it done very nicely. I think Baker was a little bit compliant there. I think he realised, you know what, I've tried pushing this as much as I possibly can, but I can't defend this anymore, and yielding the position as a result.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it can be the fact that he either doesn't think he wants to risk Sam Holman just sending a late dive up the inside and taking them both out, where if he can just sit with him in his toe, he's going to gain what maybe a few tenths back from what time he's losing. So I think it's quite clever, possibly.
Oh, definitely. And I think if he can stay... Oh, goodness me, what's happened?
Mark Baker's just lost the back end.
Oh, and that was just only moments ago. I was wondering why he disappeared out of our camera shot, and it's because he's lost it, as you say. And well, I think Baker right now will be thinking about taking that car to the pits come the end of this lap.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, as he's making his way around right now, we look a little bit further back up our order, and it is the case that looking all the way up towards our top 3, we're looking at our P2 man of Oystein Herford here as he makes his way out of the Kleiner carousel and pulling a gap over Grebstad very gradually. Meanwhile, behind with Grebstad in what is P3, chasing after Herford in the McLaren MP4. And a little bit further back for the same gap effect here, another 7.5 seconds back, we do have Billy Fletcher, who right now I think is just focusing on keeping that BMW on the tarmac. And speaking of Fletcher, I think it will be the case that very shortly we may be trying to hear from him from aboard the cockpit. We're just going to try and see if we can patch in with him. So give us 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, as we do try to have a chat with Billy Fletcher whilst he is driving that car down the Dottenahoa. Hello, Billy, can you hear us?
I can.
Billy, a bit of a difficult race so far. There's been a couple of moments where it's got a little bit hairy for yourself, but how do you feel the race has been after an hour?
Hard work. That's what I get for turning up 1 lap practice and just jumping in and seeing how we get on. I love the track. I'm just useless at driving around it. It's a good time. I'm actually just about to head into the pits. So.
Well, I think we've picked the right time to catch you then, if you're coming into the pits now.
Yeah, I think everyone can just about make it on 2 stops because of the damage I had from the start. I've had to. I think I've got to make a 3rd stop, which will be a little bit annoying.
Well, as you make your way into the pits right now, and I presume we saw in the first pit stop that you were up on the jacks there. Is it the case you've gone early on the tyres, or decided, you know, only take 2 tyres in the first pit stop and another 2 in the second stop?
No, I took all 4 in the first stop. I don't usually like taking sets of tyres at different points because I worry that the car will become a little bit inconsistent and might start catching me out. I'm already struggling to get this car around the track without crashing too often, so changing just 1 set of tyres wouldn't be a very good idea.
Well, as you're looking forward now to the second half of the 2-hour race then, where's your target position given that you think you might have to do a third stop?
To be honest, I'm not going to set a target. We're just going to keep driving around, enjoying ourselves, see who we can have some cracking fights with, and yeah, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Try not to crash too many times.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a good drive for yourself. Matt, anything you want to add?
No, I was just going to ask him about how why he took his tyres early, to be fair. And my only other question I'll ask is, how are you finding the BMW around here?
It's catch me out on the brakes. I don't know if you caught it on the first lap when I stuck it into the wall following Lundqvist down into sort of the forest area. The car's really stable and easy to drive, but all of a sudden you kind of jab the brakes on the bit too quickly, and it seems to lock the rear and flicks you around, but then you move the brake bias back and it becomes even more of an animal. So yeah, it's just, I said I did an outlap with the car earlier on for practice, and I was like, yeah, that'll do. Just got in and got on with it.
Well, I'm glad you're kind of enjoying it then.
Well, it's definitely looking very good for yourself, Billy. We won't trouble you too much more as you're making your way now up towards the start of the Nordschleife loop once again. But as you're building up towards it, just one final question for yourself. If you had to pick out one corner or sequence of corners here which you really enjoy, which ones would it be?
The last sector. The jump, everything like that, it's just awesome through there. When you hook it up, it's like, yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that one.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. Well, we'll leave you to it as you make your way onto the Nordschleife loop, but we wish you the best we wish you all the best in the second half of the race, and we'll catch you at the finish line.
Cheers, Paul.
Hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from Billy Fletcher, who we're also looking at right now, down in P9 after making his second stop and just a mid-race interview. And for those wondering, we are targeting changing the interview format slightly going into the main season. We'll be looking to bring you some more pre-race interviews with 1 or 2 drivers, also some mid-race interviews for those drivers who have the multitasking capabilities to race and be interviewed within the car, much like what you see if you tune into a British touring car, BTCC. You'll sometimes hear about the mid-race interviews with drivers, and also we'll be bringing back the post-race winner interviews in the different classes. And definitely a lot to look forward to going into Season 2, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Oh, yes. So there's going to be a lot of new and exciting things. I'm working on a couple more things, but I'd rather just try and finalise them out a bit more before I start asking about them.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about those, and I definitely do look forward to hearing what we can do as part of the broadcast. But whilst we've been talking with Billy Fletcher, it's the case that Sam Holman and also Mark Baker both into the pits, 15th and 16th respectively, as we are hearing that Janssen has just made his way through. Rick Janssen here in P15 as he comes down towards turn 1 for what in his case is now the 9th time of asking. It's crazy to think we're an hour and 10 minutes, well, an hour and 11 minutes in, and we've only done 8 laps of this circuit.
Yeah, it's such a long, winding and twisting circuit. It's amazing how they actually manage to do the 24 hours around here, because, I mean, I could not imagine driving this track at night, pitch black, with only your headlights to see where you're going.
I think it's one of those situations where in the end you sort of commit the circuit to memory. You start to see the corners before you actually see them. If you see where I'm coming from, you just get into that flow. Your arm, it's all the muscle memory. It's almost as if you could do it in your sleep. That's the way you've got to learn it.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the real-life onboards of the GT3s, but some of them, they actually have the track map stuck to the centre of the steering wheel as well.
Goodness me, now, I've never seen that, to be fair. I didn't realise that it might put the track map right in the centre of the steering wheel.
I'll find the video and I'll send it you a photo. I'll send it to you probably tomorrow. But I think it was Magny Core from... it was on Sky. I watched it on Sky. It was on a highlights thing, and they went on board with one of the Ferraris, and literally the track map was stuck in the middle of the steering wheel.
Well, that's one way to definitely make sure you know where you're going out on the circuit. And speaking from real-world experiences to on-track right now experiences of people who know where they're going, we know that Gareth Mills right now is making his way out of the pits and to go on to another lap. He's just taken what is his second, most likely scheduled stop of the day. In fact, that is his second stop. And Mills now making his way through turns 1 and 2 once again. But the field's spaced out. We've had a couple more retirements. We've lost, I think it's Jamie Dory. We've also lost Dirk Bounce. And we have lost Navarro Dabova and Kevin van der Silks. We're now down to 19 remaining drivers after our starting field of 36 drivers, and it does seem as though the circuit is continuing to take drivers as we go deeper and deeper into the 120 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen how challenging it is now. We've hit the hour mark. You think there's 170 corners per lap. How much fatigue might be starting to set in with some of these drivers?
Oh, definitely. But I'll tell you one thing that's not setting in terms of fatigue, and that is in the chat right now as we say hello to Craig Pierce, who's joined us in the Twitch chat, and to all you guys and girls who are continuing to tune in right now. You've been with us since the start. We really do appreciate it, and we hope you're enjoying it so far. Do appreciate it has calmed down a little bit with regards to the racing now that we're into the final 46 minutes and closing of the racing, as I think Fletcher's had a crash. He's had a major crash out on circuit. He's jumped to the pits immediately.
Yeah, I didn't know of anything until you told me then, and he's just... I'll let you get the replay up and then we'll talk through it.
Well, I think it's the case that as he's come before the carousel, he's just simply overbroken it and the brakes have just given way. He's gone straight into the tyre barrier there. Coming up the hill before the carousel, the car has just not stopped. He's gone into the wall.
Yeah. Well, a bit earlier on, he's just touched the grass and clipped the outside... back corner on the wall and then come into the carousel. Yeah, I think he's picked up a bit too much damage there.
Well, that does affect him. Meaning, if Fletcher comes back out the pits, he's now relegated to 19th, the last of our running drivers, which means that whilst Tom Mao is leading by 44.2 seconds over Øystein Hereford, it is the case that, well, with our field spacing out right now, it's the opportunity for Øystein Hereford and also Håkon Gustad to take the podium, as we hear that Tom Mao is now into the pits for what is his second and most likely his final scheduled pit stop here, as he just cruises his way into his box here, and we'll assume he's going to be going up on the jacks. As he makes his way on in, it just takes it nice and easy into the pits here and doesn't need to do anything silly, just takes it nice and peacefully in. And meanwhile behind, will we see a full-up pit stop here from the likes of what is Øystein Hereford or Krupstad? We're just seeing Hereford making his way all the way down to the end of Dottenahoa, and as he comes into the last two corners here, it's going to be the case. Does he pit or does he stay out there and take the lead, albeit it may only be for a lap, but does he decide to take the lead here? He does indeed. He makes his way on through to go on to what is lap number 10. So it will be the case that we're not going to see one driver lead every lap. And Øystein Hereford sets a personal best, an 8:17.5. To be fair, in terms of the lap times, he is roughly 2 to 3 seconds slower on average per lap compared to Gustad. But to be fair, Øystein Hereford has been putting in some very consistent laps. Now that he's got the space, he hasn't got Proutin to battle with or Gustad, he has been enjoying this one. I think Hereford definitely a force to be reckoned with regards to season 2. We saw him when he came into season 1, he was very strong, but a very fair racer, and I think we can see a lot more from him in season 2.
Yeah, 100%.
But meanwhile, whilst he's making his way on down, we are hearing that Daniel Blomqvist has made his way into the pits as Tom Mao leaves the pit lanes. That shows you the delta that Tom Mao has had over the rest of the field. Jeremy De Bova also into the pits here, so the second round of scheduled stops all starting to creep in, as Rick Jansen, meanwhile, has had a bit of a moment out on circuit. Has dropped down to P15, and let's just take a look at what happened to the Porsche driver. So this was quite a while ago, in fact. This is quite early on in the lap. And as he's making his way down into what was the bridge section, it was the case the rear end just completely snapped. And he just lost the rear end. He didn't go into the wall, to be fair. Just the rear end came round to him a bit too quickly and had to get the car spun out on circuit once again. I think Fletcher may have retired as well now. In fact, we have lost Fletcher, so we are now down to only 18 drivers. We started off with 36 and we've now halved the field.
Yeah, she's claiming a few victims, is the Nurburgring.
Oh, she is, and as they make their way around the circuit right now, we can see that Blomqvist up on the jacks in the pits, as is Jochen Seeger. In fact, I think he might just be going in for fuel here. I don't see him up on the jacks. Jeremy De Bova, meanwhile, is definitely up on the jacks making those tyre changes, as very shortly, I expect, Blomqvist has left the pit lane. He's going racing once again into P6 right now, and, well, in terms of the gap to Tom Mao, he's got a 1 minute and 3 second gap to Tom Mao, as meanwhile, coming down to the end of the start-finish straight is Jean-Louis Deschamps here. Deschamps, to be fair, has made, I think that is on my graph here, he's made his second stop already. So Jean-Louis Deschamps gaining some places here by making early pit stops, but will he have to make a third stop because he made his second stop quite early by comparison? Robert Sunik as well has, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, has also made a second stop. I think he's due a third one at some point because he did have a moment earlier on in the race. As we are seeing, Jeremy DeBovo has come out ahead of Jochen Seeger, and Jochen Seeger is just coming out of the pits now in P10. But the AM driver here having a really solid race, and I think he's one of a very limited number of AM drivers still in this race, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I think we've lost quite a few of them. Gareth Mills is still out. Jochen. Mark Baker, I think, is still out there, yeah. And Nigel Stock. I think we've got nearly all of our Rams. Oh no, we've lost a few, to be fair.
And we lost Van Hohenacker, Stefan Gamble, Rasmussen, and also Peter Kupiers quite early on. And those are just the names that I've got listed here on my chart. But I think there may have been a couple more that we may have lost along the way.
Well, ignoring me, there's Navarro, Van Hohenacker, Koopmans, Gamble, Rasmussen, Kuipers, Kriegel, Osterhuis. So we've only got Mills, Seeger, Baker and Stock left.
Oh, dearie me. And we're seeing in the Twitch chat, just whilst we were talking about Billy Fletcher retiring moments ago, he's put in the Twitch chat, he's happy that we're not racing at this circuit this season. I think I can understand why right now, because if this circuit's able to claim a capable driver such as Fletcher, it is the case. It's going to claim anybody, well, apart from Tom Mayle at Seaman Oystein Hereford, the only two drivers who've yet to make any significant error or show signs of an error. As we can also see there in the Twitch chat, we've also got Elwin Sykes in the Twitch chat and also Confetti Pop. And good evening to you, Confetti Pop. I think this is the first time we've seen you in here. It's good to see you here. And also thank you for the raid, Billy. That's very much appreciated. As we are now just seeing the final 40 minutes of this race gradually play out. But right now, it is the case that our field has broken out a little bit, although Jeremy DeBova is starting to go on the offensive versus Robert de Sunik.
Might I add something, please, Paul?
Go ahead.
If anyone in the chat watching or anything has got any questions regarding next season, they're more than welcome to drop a comment and I'll try my best to answer them.
Definitely, and I think just to give some context, so Matt, if with regards to your role at NXTGEN, do you want to introduce what your role is specifically in relation to this championship?
I am the host and organiser of this championship.
Yeah, so Matt is the brains, and well, I'm just the brawn in the box here in terms of the commentating, as Matt runs all the organisation, does a fantastic job off of it, and I'm not sucking up right now at all, I must say.
No, you're the beautiful voice behind it all.
Oh, you do flatter me. But as we're complimenting one another out of the circuit, we just heard that Paul Williams has found his way past Jochen Seeger, and I think Seeger's actually had a bit of an off before he made his way out to Flugplatz, and in fact that BMW is looking a little bit scraped at the front. I think he may have had a moment into the wall. We're just going to take a look back and see what happened. In fact, the rear end came loose there on cold tyres, no less, and into the wall. In fact, a double whammy, the front end and then the rear end getting rotated and tapping the wall as well. And that BMW is going to feel very painful as he actually then drove straight into the wall off circuit as well. And I think the NXTGEN Racing orange driver here has perhaps just seen the light at the end of the tunnel diminish slightly as then Paul Williams came on through to take the place off him as he rejoined.
Yeah, you've all just seen the what can happen on the cold tyres where you're pushing a bit too much, or you're thinking you're still on your warm tyres, you're still on your dual braking zones, and it can just come up and bite you like that.
Oh, definitely. And meanwhile, we are seeing in the Twitch chat here from Craig Pearce, who's saying, hate this circuit. Only thing that should happen here is bulldozers. Well, that's a bit brutal, but I guess it's not a circuit for everyone, so I can understand that from Craig. We can also see there Billy Fletcher saying, I've probably only ever done about 30 laps in total, then using the car I'm completely unfamiliar with made it even more difficult. We can also see, and this is very true in the YouTube chat right now, and it should be pointed out and praised, it's a case of Grubstad, Angry D there in the YouTube chat saying that Grubstad has had an outstanding race so far, having started down in what was P20.
21.
A P21 indeed, a fantastic drive from Grubstad to come all the way up through the field, and even with those two, with that moment as well at YouTube corner where he spun the car into the wall.
Yeah, and he's showing he's got some pace in what I find quite a difficult car, but to him, it could be one of the easier cars for him to drive.
Most definitely, and I must tell you one thing, with that rather nice black and gold livery right now, I do think that George Bland does have some rivalry in terms of liveries on a McLaren.
Yes, I must admit, talking to, obviously I work with George, he's missing the McLaren just because it spits flames. That's one of the only reasons he's missing that car.
Oh dear, well, it's a hot topic, driving the McLaren, and as we can see Gristad now making his way onto the dot in the higher straight. We take a look back to our chat here, and we can see in the YouTube chat, Joey Fernando Vlog saying, can you send me some sponsorship decks for next season? Kindful Creative moving nicely into the race scene. Well, Joey, if you're on the Next Gen Racing Discord, we can definitely talk about that offline after today. And we can see Billy Fletcher there confirming. I just wanted to show off some Mark Sykes artwork on the BMW. Well, I think Mark will definitely appreciate that and spreading the word of Mark Sykes designs.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing Billy's thoughts on if we're in different cars next season, to be honest.
Oh, indeed. It's going to be very interesting to see all the different liveries when they line up for the official season. And I do wish, in some respects, that with regards to whilst this is sim racing, that we could actually walk down the paddock and actually take a look at each one of the liveries whilst they're all waiting to go out on circuit. But, hey, you know what? We can always dream.
Yeah, well, as you've probably seen in we have got the Next Gen Racing Discord, and some of us do, when we get the new liveries made, we do put them in out there for everyone to see and get reactions from everyone. And to be fair, every livery I've seen so far has been absolutely stunning to look at.
Oh, most definitely. But right now, as we come away from talking about liveries, Oystein Hereford and also Gristad are into the pits, prouting as well here. And this will release Tom Male back into the lead, as it looks as though the rest of our top five all come in to take their pit stops. So Tom Male retakes the lead, and I suspect that the margin he's going to retake it by is going to be somewhere in the region of around about 44 seconds, as that was the gap that he had over Oystein Hereford before he pitted, and of course pitted himself out of sequence with the rest of the drivers. With him, Robert de Sunik has had a major moment and jumped to the pits, and that drops him all the way down to P18. He's been reset back a lap, and meanwhile Gareth Williams, then we've got Matthew Prouting, Oystein Hereford, they're all in the pits right now, and I think Prouting is not up on the jacks. Meanwhile, I can tell you that Gristad has just come off the jacks and is now leaving the pit lane, and meanwhile we can also see Oystein Hereford leaving. These two are going to be very close together, and Prouting as well here. I think we're going to see a three-way fight down to turns 1 and 2, as Hereford's able to get away, but Gristad just comes out behind Prouting. He will not be happy to see that, for the simple reason that Prouting there has gained, whereas it's Gristad who's lost out to a degree. But I think it's about who can switch on the tyres as quickly as possible here as they make their way around the GP loop, and Gristad needs to get on the offensive early. Yeah,
100%. I mean, if that BMW can get its temperatures up on the tyres quicker, obviously it will pull away. But the McLaren, I think, is what I've seen from talking to George. It always manages to find a way to get them tyres warmed up really quick, as we're seeing as he's going for the move into the hairpin at the bottom of the GP layout.
Yeah, he's definitely looking for it under brake, and I think he's going to get it here as Prouting takes a wide line and almost runs off the circuit there, and Prouting giving him room and then some as they make their way out. And it definitely looks as though Gristad goes on the offensive, gains that place, and now tries to break away here. But I suspect Prouting may try to come back in the run-up towards Vidal here, but he's got to nail the Schumacher S. He's done a good job of it, but Prouting's already 4 attempts back here. I think he's too far to make a return move unless Gristad makes a mistake. I think Gristad's just decided, you know what, I'm going to take it and go.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it might be more the class differentiation, because Prouting doesn't need to battle him to win his class. I mean, he's about, well, I think he's nearly a minute ahead of his nearest rival, which is Vistor de Champs.
I believe it is. Yes, it is that situation where he's about, 40 seconds ahead right now, comfortably ahead. So for Prouting, it's a case of just back it off and keep it clean, as we hear that Paul Williams is into the pits from P9. But Gristad is definitely going after Oystein Hereford right now, and Hereford needs to be wary of this, simply because Gristad has already closed up, going on to the Nordschleife, but he's already closed up 2 tenths per second. That's in the space of 3 corners, and we've still got the best part of about 150 corners to go here.
Yeah, we were saying, did Hereford take tyres as well? I think he did.
Yeah, they both did.
It's just, we were saying that McLaren can turn its tyres on a lot quicker than the Audi and the BMW.
Oh, indeed, that is the case. And as they make their way out towards Flugplatz here, it's already another couple attempts have been taken. As meanwhile, we're hearing that Jochen Siegert has just come out of the pits. Nigel Stock has gone on through to take P10, but I believe he's due another pit stop. And Paul Williams still in the pit lane. As we're seeing the mismatch of strategies now start to overlap. And it is one of those situations where as we look a bit further down, Stock, he does have Jochen Siegert, who's 5.5 seconds behind and gradually closing. But I believe for Nigel Stock, it is the situation right now where he will most likely need to pit again, although I could be wrong about that. He's registered as taking 2 pit stops, but I think he had to cut 1 stop early because of the damage he picked up to the front end of that BMW. But as he makes his way down towards the hairpin right now, if he's not due another stop, this could be a bit of a surprise turn for Jochen Siegert, who now has to pass him on track, but he gets it wrong at the turn 5 hairpin and puts the car into a spin. And as he goes to rejoin, you have to wait for Siegert to come through, who does come through, and Stock there just overdoing it into turn 5 and sending the rear wide. And as a result, now Jochen Siegert resumes the lead of the AM class, or the AMs here today. Of course, as you were saying earlier, Matt, no points up for grabs here today, but a little bit of pride on the line for some drivers, or perhaps, or like trying to make a statement to say that they have got quite a bit of pace in their class going into the season.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking the word momentum is another one. And if you can turn around and win your class in pre-season, you're going to start thinking, well, I've beat you all in pre-season, I can beat you in the actual, when it means something, so to speak.
Oh, definitely, and it's, as you say, with the momentum, and also trying to, a little bit of an intimidation factor as well. It's one of those situations right now where you take every moment you can get if you want to try and assert that feeling of dominance over the other drivers. But then again, over the course of a season of 12 rounds, anything can happen over the 12 rounds. We saw that in Season 1, particularly the resurgence of a number of drivers in the AM class midway through the season, and also other drivers who just seemed to not have the form in the second half and fell by the wayside. But will we see similar stories like that? Only time will tell. But meanwhile, we've got Sam Holman in the pits right now with a little bit of a mangled front end on that Porsche. I think it might have lost a little bit of the sparkle off of the car, no pun intended. As meanwhile, we also see Robert Dasunik is still parked up in the pits here, and I think that may be another retirement because he's been quite a long time in the pits right now and has dropped off of the lead lap as Gareth Mills comes across to go onto his 10th lap here. So it is the case that right now everybody is on lap 11, I should say. Meanwhile, Robert Dasunik is still classified as going on to his 10th lap. So right now we are down to 17 drivers on that lead lap and continuing racing. Half an hour to go, and we can see that Sam Holman is still in the pits having some repair work done to the car and just patiently waiting, as meanwhile Tom Mayo just continues to dominate. And I think Jean-Louis Deschamps has had a major moment, I'm just hearing. In fact, yes, he's across the circuit there, and Jean-Louis Deschamps has had a major moment. Now, where is that? That is in the run all the way down towards what is Drakenfeld Rex, and that has really not worked out as we take a look back at what happened. In fact, that is in the run down towards Bergwerk, my apologies, and he's done what we saw a number of drivers do early on, just gone too high up on the exit curve there before Bergwerk, and as a result just send the car into a spin, and Jean-Louis Deschamps find himself right in the middle of the road and having to gradually turn it around. That is not good reading for them at Challenge BE driver right now as he goes to go racing once again. But meanwhile, as he makes his way up the hill now, heading towards the carousel gradually, we do take another look in the chat, and we can see Billy Fletcher saying, confirmed, I won't be in that BMW in the Twitch chat, but it'll be interesting to see if Tom Mayo can make the end. We'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, Elwin Sykes saying to Billy, I thought you were trying to copy and paste the livery to the barriers in the BMW, at least you gave it a good go. Indeed, Fletcher did give it a good shot, as Robert Dasunik does emerge from the pit. So Dasunik's still in the race, he's a lap down now, but he could potentially make this work, as also Sam Holman has just come out of the pits a lap down as well. So it is the case that Dasunik and Holman have got one another for company, albeit they are quite a way down on the... Well, no, they're not a lap down. In fact, that's just been updated on my screen. They are actually on the lead lap still. So my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, getting a little bit confused with the laps there. As Dasunik has just jumped back into the pits once again. I think something has gone wrong for Dasunik, and this may spell a little bit of a bad day in the office for him, for the Dutchman.
Yeah, I think he might be suffering hardware issues.
That's very unfortunate if so, but meanwhile, coming to a battle that is starting to build up on circuit. Jean-Louis Deschamps has had another moment on the circuit we're hearing off camera. The battle for P2 is now coming to the foray, as we can see Gristad here, as we ride on board with the McLaren driver, chasing after Oystein Hereford here and trying to go on the offensive here. Now, he's going to be quite far back, but Matt, what would you say in terms of when he comes onto the Dotinahoa straight? He's only 6 tenths off right now. Could this be an opportunity?
It could well be. I mean, we'll have to see if that McLaren's quicker than the Audi in a straight line. It will have the advantage of the toe, but we'll have to see. I mean, he's been really, really, really impressive in this.
Well, he's definitely looking for the move, and Hereford had a really bad run out of the right-hander, so as they make the way now, here's the case. Gustave comes out of the slipstream there, and it's side-by-side in the long run down the straight. They're halfway down the straight right now before the left-hand kink, and it is the case that Hereford is losing a little bit of ground, but he tucks back in immediately, and Hereford's going to try and now use the return toe to come back at Gustave into the braking zone here. They're coming into the kink right now. They're side-by-side.
Yeah, very, very nearly. This is going to be a close one going into the S's up here, and these Hereford just backed off a bit and conceded the position.
It does look as they didn't quite have enough momentum to really force Gustave to need to back off there, and it is a difficult one. I do remember in the GT Sport FIA Manufacturers World Finals of 2019, on the final lap around this circuit, we had, I think it was Lexus and Supra, and Toyota I should say, go side by side into that sequence of corners all the way through the sequence. They both had to give one another plenty of space, and it was the driver who started off the sequence on the inside of the left-hand kink that came off victorious there, and Gustave really asserted his position there and made sure that Hereford was going to have to go the long way round and make himself as uncomfortable as possible in doing so. And Gustave now up into P2. To be fair, if it is the case that Tom Male does not have to pit again, it's going to be well and doesn't make a mistake. I don't think Gustave's going to close down our leader, but Gustave to go from P21 to P2 and be showing the pace he is showing right now. It's no discredit to Hereford, to be fair, but it does look as though Gustave's really making a statement today.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's nice to see another McLaren on the grid, to be honest. But yeah, I think he only messaged me about an hour before this started, telling me he wanted to swap from, I think, with the Porsche he put on the sign-up form to the McLaren. And if he's not had that much practice with it, he's doing really, really well with it. And I'd love to see what he can do when he's got a bit more practice in it.
Oh, indeed, it's going to be very interesting to see. But right now, we're saying that he made the pass and starting to get the move on. It looks like Hereford's starting to close back up a little bit. He's skating into the slipstream zone. He's in the 5/10 window right now as they make their way up towards Vidal here. And is it just the case that Hereford's starting to find a little bit more momentum now that he's got somebody to chase after?
It could well possibly. I mean, he could have thought, well, I'll follow you for a lap. I've got the time, and I'll see if there's anywhere where you're taking a different line than me or a different braking zone.
Definitely, you can see it there into turn 13 before Schmidt curve, in the Sabine Schmidt curve, I should say, where the fact we saw Gustave go much wider into the corner and gain 2 tenths as a result of it, where Hereford took a very tight line. I don't think he had the confidence to throw the car in over the camber change and the road surface change, but as meanwhile they make their way now through the opening sequence of corners on the Nordschleife loop, it does look as though it's through the technical sections here, where the Audi and the McLaren should both be strong. It looks like Gustave just seems to have a bit more confidence in the car. It's not to say Hereford's not pushing that car, but the body language would suggest there's a bit more roll on that McLaren, and as a result, Gustave's able to use that roll in order to push it through the corners a bit more aggressively. As they come up in towards Flugplatz right now, we'll see the comparison where both drivers will make their way through the corner, and I think it is the situation where as they do come through, Gustave just seems to feel that confidence. He just can take 1 to 2 mile an hour more speed for each apex. But meanwhile, whilst this is happening, I'm hearing that Paul Scott has come into the pit lane. I think he's just re-emerging from the pit lane right now. And you can see it's back up into P9 as we've got Nigel Stock into the pits, making a third and final stop here. So it's not going to be the dream scenario for the BMW driver where he can take the AM lead. He has had to relinquish it to Jochen Siegert.
Yeah, and I've just noticed Mark Baker dropping down a bit, and I'm just watched it. He's had a moment into the wall again, and that Ferrari's looking a bit beaten and bruised now.
It is indeed. It does look quite heavily crumpled as he's jumped back to the pits. Now he drops back to the back of the field. And, well, will we see a retirement here, or will he make the remaining 23 minutes of racing? I have to wait and see on that, of course, as Nigel Stock now leaves the pit lane in P12 as he just makes his way out, and he's got plenty of time. He doesn't have to worry about Rick Jansen behind him, who is the best part of 1.5 minutes down according to our time screens right now. Jansen's just making his way onto the dot in Ohio Straight. Meanwhile, Stock is making his way into turn 1. But in terms of battles that could be coming up in the near future, I think it may be the case that looking at our time screens right now, most of the battles have settled down, and there's sizable gaps between drivers. I think we're waiting for the next big mistake and whether that could kick off some battles.
Yeah, quite possibly.
As our drivers continue to make them also go on.
Nice. I was going to say, well, we've got a quick lull in proceedings. Based on this week and last week, Paul, I'm curious to know who's your who's the one to watch for your eyes for next season for the championships.
Oh, goodness me. Well, I think I can't put it down to one driver, but I can put... Well, one thing I can say, and I can't remember the individual's name, and I do apologise for this, but the South African driver who... I think it was Stefan Wessels, I think, was the name of the driver, the RTA driver, who was at Interlagos last week on his debut really in iRacing. That was his first taste of actual racing in iRacing in the AM class, to be putting the pressure on the Pro-Ams and even some of the pros. I think he is going to be a massive contender for a rookie. I think he is really going to scare a lot of the AMs. And when I say scare, I don't think in terms of giving the fright, although we've just had Halloween to be fair, but I'm a couple of days behind. I think it's more of the case, I think for some of the established AMs, so the likes of Jochen Siegert, for example, Alexander Batak, of course, our season winner in Season 1 in the AM class, and also other individuals such as Mikkel Andreasen, and even yourself. I think you might be looking over your shoulder right now thinking about the guy. I think he will be the dark horse, because he's like I would compare him to a sort of Lewis Hamilton snow, where he's just come out of nowhere, but he's already shown the pace to be a championship contender.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Having raced him last week, he was really good at his corner exits, and I just, in the BM, I couldn't compete with him, not only because he was in the Lambo and I were in the BM, but he was able to keep more speed going into the corners, be better on the brakes, and it just showed, considering it was his first week or two on iRacing, the talent he's got. I think that's the word I'd use. And I think, yeah, definitely he's going to be one of the dark horses from the championship next season.
But meanwhile, if you were to ask me, in the, what would be the Pro-Am class, I'm actually going to put it out there and say Ed Lack. I think it will be Ed's up. He is in the Pro-Am class, unless I'm mistaken.
Yes, I think so up to now. I'll get it up now and I'll have a look.
As we hear, Mark Baker has just jumped into this, and Jochen Siegert has had a moment into the wall, just coming out of the downhill right-hander before heading down into Drachenfeld Rex. And, well, he's spinning the car around, and that's Paul Scott, who has taken a bit of evasive action, but Siegert in the end jumps to the pits. He's decided, no, that car is not going anywhere further. At least until they've done some repair work on it, of course, but then that means he will now be coming out of the pits in P16, as we're hearing Robert de Sunic has decided to call a time, I believe. So it's Mark Baker right now who is in P18, and Sam Holman has come up to P15 as a result of it. But coming back to what you're discussing, Matt, there with the Pro-Ams, do you have confirmation about Ed Lack, whether he is a Pro-Am?
Yes, he is a Pro-Am.
So I would put money on, because in the Pro class in Season 1, he was definitely very consistent. He had a lot of races not go his way. There were a number of incidents where he found himself right in the thick of a number of incidents, which saw him drop all the way down the order, and he had to make a number of recovery drives throughout. And I think for him, it could be an opportunity to shine, particularly with some of the rule changes that have come in for this season with regards to, well, I believe the rule change, unless they haven't been confirmed yet, with regards to the formation of the reverse grid for the purposes of the feature race.
Yeah, they are a bit more hard work for me, and you have to bear with me. It is reverse class grid order. So like we saw it in Interlagos last week, where everyone was together in the classes, that's the way it's going to be.
Which is so, I think that will really give Ed Lack a great opportunity to show the pace he did have at his disposal, because every time he seemed to have good pace at a circuit, it was undermined by an incident which was not his fault at all, and that is what I think he just needs. He needs that breathing room, but also another contingent of drivers, the Team RP Motorsport Pro-Am drivers. I think they're all going to be very strong, and we've seen a couple of them again tonight. Lucas Romano in particular, who can race very fairly and has a lot of pace under his belt. He's just one of a number of them that we'll need to keep our eyes on.
Yep. To be honest, Pro-Am for me, looking at the list, I'm not going to agree with Ed Lack. I know, not trying to sound harsh, I know Ed's got responsibility with work and stuff, so it could, if he can make every round and just miss one for the drop score, yes, I kind of agree. But to be honest, there's about a handful of drivers that I would want to put money on just one. There's Ed's teammate Phil McDougall.
Yes.
2 or 3 of the Ignium boys that have come into it that really quick. And I won't count out, and this is one to throw out there, is Colin Martin. He's learned a lot more about that BMW. He's a lot faster for it, so we will have to see.
Whilst we're discussing that, sorry to cut back to the racing here and now, but Nigel Stock has jumped to the pits after a moment out on circuit. Mark Baker as well has jumped to the pits, and Paul Scott. We've had a number of drivers come in, and I think Mark Baker might have called time on this one. So we have lost another driver, and we have also just lost, I think, Nigel Stock as well. Paul Scott's also parked up at this time. I think they're just doing repair work on the car, but I think we are now down to 15 drivers remaining. If Paul Scott can't get that car out, Jochen Seeger as well has just retired. We are down to 14 drivers, perhaps even 13, if it's the case that Paul Scott can't get that car out of the pits right now. So as we're coming down to the final 16 minutes, we've just had a number of drivers drop out through damage to the cars.
Yeah, I think we're about 13, because Gareth Mills and De Vlaeminck, Janssen and Williams are still all going, but they're behind Scott, Stock and Seeger currently. I know we've lost Jochen as well.
Oh, we have indeed, and it's a very unfortunate one, but this circuit is absolutely merciless as they make their way around on the circuit, and I completely mince my words, but as they continue around, coming on to the Pro Class meanwhile, I think the Pro Class is going to be a lot harder to predict. I mean, I think the favourites will, Fletcher of course will be the defending champion, but I think he's going to have his work cut out for him. I think the favourite going into it, just given the amount of pace he showed joining the season so late, was Matt Caruana. I suspect Caruana is going to have a target on his back, but there's plenty of very strong drivers coming into the pro category, a number of them we haven't seen so far, even in these testing sessions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the list myself, and I think we've seen 7 of them out of 20. So there's going to be a lot of quick people. And it's going to be, I'm going to put it this way, I sit and rewatch every stream at the weekend, just trying to come up with more ideas to make the championship better and stuff like that. And also, I enjoy watching the racing back and listening to you commentate on it, Paul. Not to try and make anything, but I'm going to really look forward to next season because it's going to be so close and so good to watch. And I'm hoping that the calendar we picked is going to promote absolutely brilliant racing as well.
Oh, most definitely. And I think one of the big things that we have to expect, can you just double check for me, is Tom Mayle going to be in the Lobby 1 pro group or is he in Lobby 2?
He's in Lobby 1, so he's in the Apex Racing Academy lobby, so the one, I think it's the one you're commentating on, Paul.
Yes, because I'm going to put my money on right now. If Tom Mayle turns up here like he has and has gone on to do so well, and he does, if he was to turn up at Suzuka next week and show this sort of pace as well, I think Tom Mayle could be a huge contender right now because this is a flawless drive. I mean, he's 48 seconds ahead of Gristad and Hereford. And to be fair, Gristad and Hereford, they've both had their moments out on circuit, but Mayle has just simply cruised this one. And it's not to say that he hasn't been pushing hard, but in the Huracan no less, to drive the way he has right now, this has been phenomenal driving.
Yeah, it has. I mean, he's been he's found an extra gear that nobody else has been able to find, and even we've seen Billy trying to find that extra gear, and he's made uncharacteristic mistakes. It's everyone. Basically, the way I've done the classes is basically through the start before the pre-season races is based on iRating. Now, iRating is like I would say, skill level or difficulty. To put it into comparison, Matt Caruana, we've all seen how quick he is 6,000 iRating. Tom Mayle is 4,300. So it shows the level of talent he's got compared to what iRacing have said. This is why we do the pre-season races, because I would have never thought he'd have had this kind of pace, to be honest.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because sometimes with those ratings on, say, iRacing, indeed a number of, and I should clarify here, ladies and gentlemen, this can happen on any sort of ranking system, it's not just iRacing. You have these drivers who they're very good drivers, but they haven't got the ratings that align with their performance, and whether it's because they've just never really played online, or alternatively, because they've just had really bad luck when they've been racing online, etc. They can come out of the woods, and in a league format such as this, they just get to demonstrate what capabilities they have, like what Mail's doing right now.
Sorry, I've just got to sort something out for the classes.
That's no problem at all. But as we see Mal making his way now down through Flensgarden Zwei once again here, and now come up to the Kleiner Carousel very shortly. All of our battles have spaced out. We do have Paul Scott. He is still in the pits, and I think it is the case. He's going to be classified as P15 if he doesn't come back out the pits, because you can see it has parked up just a bit further up the pit lane, albeit they've now put the car back in the trailer and taken it away from the circuit. As we see Gareth Mills, they're just going a little bit wide out the exit of the turn 5 hairpin, but keeping it nicely together. And as he makes his way through the Schumacher S, I think it's going to be one of the cases, if the drivers for, ladies and gentlemen, to look out for in the different classes across the classes, I'm not saying this just in terms of we can expect them to do really well or absolutely dominate or anything along those lines, but drivers who I think will have their time in the sunshine. I think Gareth Mills is one of those drivers, the South African. He was a fan favourite in Season 1, not just because of his liveries, but also because of his up and out and attitude. And we did see him put in some very good performances throughout. He wasn't on the podium, if I remember, in any of the AM class races last year, but he did put in some solid performances and showed you don't have to be the best to have good fun. And coming away from the AMs and looking more up towards the Pro-Am region, Jean-Louis Deschamps is a driver who I can definitely recommend people keep their eyes on. A very, very strong driver in the Porsche 991, and also a very friendly driver as well. You're not going to go wrong if you are to bump into Jean-Louis Deschamps on an online forum in the street. He does come across as one of the nicest people out there, as we are hearing that Tom Mail has come into the pit lane again. Now, this is interesting. We didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, but it's like Billy was saying, he pitted early, so he might not have had the fuel on board to be able to complete. So let's just see how long he's in the pits for. Because I mean, is Hack on Grabsteg going to have kept a gap good enough to be able to come back at him? No, definitely not.
No, they're just quickly putting a little bit of fuel, and he's done enough down. I think he might have just put in a tiny bit more fuel. Perhaps he's going to go target that 8.13. The best lap of this race so far has been set by Mail, it should be pointed out. It's an 8.14.03. I think a part of him may be itching to get the 8.13.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you on that one.
But surely at this point, if he's going to put... Well, I say that, and immediately, look who's just gone and set an 8.13. It's Gustave with an 8.13.96. Well, Gustave is pushing that car right now on low fuel. And I think the McLaren driver at this point, well, yes, he is definitely throwing out a little bit of a gauntlet, I think, to Mal to say, okay, well, you've been very fast, but know that I can do the same in the McLaren as well, now that we're on low fuel. And will we see Mal respond here? He'll have one more lap after his out lap here. In these race conditions, will he be able to improve? We have been seeing the lap times come down. A lot of drivers now putting in personal best. We just saw a personal best there from Williams. There's Gareth Williams with an 8.15.2 down in P6, and a lot of 8.15s now starting to come onto the board.
Yeah, everyone will be on low fuel now, and the car becomes a lot more nimble, a lot faster in a straight line. So I expect the times to come down. I'd be a bit worried if they didn't.
So I have to ask, out of curiosity, and this is also for the viewers, in qualifying, are these cars fully loaded with fuel, or is there a preset amount of fuel that goes into the cars?
These cars are... So the setups for the qualifying is the same as the sprint race. So there's roughly about 20 minutes with the fuel, so I think it's about 45 kilos on board of fuel.
I see. So it's quite a good amount of fuel then for qualifying, so you shouldn't need to really take on fuel in the session as such.
No, so it pays to go out, not make a mistake, and just basically keep going on the lap and getting your tyres warmed up. I think the one track that we didn't have like a good time of it with qualifying was Long Beach, which I have had a few people whinge at me. It's not on next season's calendar. I think that was one of the only tracks that the tyres just wouldn't switch on properly.
Long Beach did catch a number of drivers back out in Season 1, and for those wondering what is Long Beach, well, it was our circuit based at California in the United States, a circuit which you will have seen if you remember the days of, I think it was Nigel Mansell racing in Formula 1, or even a little bit earlier than that when they used to race at Long Beach. Very tight street circuit, and one of those circuits where it's a case of very high track temperatures as well, and also some no overtaking zones, and we had to enforce a couple of rules, no overtaking at the water fountain or into the final corner.
Yeah, we did, and it was also the week, the Wednesday, the race. We did the lap of honour for the fallen marshal.
Yes, that is correct. And for the context of ladies and gentlemen viewing, we had the unfortunate loss of one of the Orange Army. The Orange Army being the guys who dress up in the orange high vis and marshal events. Race events, without whom a lot of them volunteers. It's not their day job, it's their volunteering job, and they stand at the trackside and enable us to actually go racing. They act as the safety marshals, and we lost one of those many members. Unfortunately, I can't remember the chap's name, which I feel very guilty about, but I can't remember the individual's name, but we did do the lap of honour in his memory. Which was very befitting, and yeah, everyone kept that very tight in formation there, and it's one of those things which goes understated in motorsport. When it goes well, it's fantastic. When it goes wrong, immediately all attention's turned to is everybody okay? As we can see there, Craig Pearce in the Twitch chat saying that marshals are the backbone of racing and the British marshals are by far the best. Well, I can't comment on which marshals are the best per se, but definitely marshals are the backbone of racing, and without them we would never go racing. Alternatively would, but that's normally racing up and down the motorway on a Friday night. But
yeah,
as we can
to
see,
make it feel a bit better, his name is Robert Foote.
Robert Foote, yes, it was the Foote Memorial.
Yes. I just thought I'd have a quick look on Google then.
So whilst we are now counting down the minutes, we've only just over 6 minutes to go, but then we of course do need to finish the lap we are currently on. None of the gaps are really closing up at the moment, although I can see that Tom Mayle is starting to push a little bit harder, getting himself back into the swing. He is setting some purple sectors, although comparing his sector times versus Griff Stad, the two of them are exchanging sector times as if it's going out of style right now. It's very close.
Yeah, are we going to see an 8:13.8 from Tom Mayle?
Well, I think if he does go for it at this point, it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal lap here. And I think as he makes his way now up towards what is the start of the run in towards Carousel, he'll be thinking about where can he find that grip, where are those little zones where he can perhaps just get a little bit more time. Because right now, being on that outlap, of course, he doesn't want to push it to the max, he wants to save the energy up. Meanwhile, going from a person on an outlap to a person who's coming in, DDD Vlaming into the pits here for another pit stop, his final stop of the day most likely here, and he will then go on to one final lap. Currently P11, Gareth Mills is the driver behind him in P12, but Mills is all the way down at the start of the Dottenham straight right now. He's not going to be catching up anytime soon unless DDD Vlaming has the mother of all disasters in the pit lane, but he's emerged from the pit lane already. He is going and racing once again. He'll be taking home that P11 unless something goes wrong on the final lap. So it's not so, of course, but we do know the commentator's curse has applied a number of times, and I've unfortunately bestowed that curse on you, Matt, a few times, I think.
Yes, you have. Le Mans was the first one, I think, when I went into Mulsanne, and I'll be honest, when every time I've raced, I always have you on in the background just so I can keep an eye on everything while I'm racing. And I remember you saying how me and Nigel Stock were battling for the win, so to speak, at the time, but Betak was ahead, and I remember you questioning whether he pitted. So I started to push harder, thinking I need to get this gap down. I'm not losing this, this chance of winning. And I accelerated a bit too hard out of Mulsanne and lost the back end and totaled my front end, shall we say?
Oh, I can't claim responsibility for anything. I'm just going to gradually intro it.
But I think we evened ourselves out at the end of that race, didn't we? Because of how little the chances we gave you to breathe.
Yeah, Very, very, very true. Particularly the four-way slipstream battle in the pro class between what was Jerry DeBova, Jean-Louis Deschamps, and two of the Ignium Motorsport drivers. I think that was Ben Hicks and also Jaco Boshoff, which just went on for lap after lap. It was fantastic racing. But to be fair, we talk about racing in last season. Last week's pre-season at Interlagos, whilst today's pre-season test had a bit of racing early on, at Interlagos last week, it was almost as if they were going for the championship finale.
Yeah, obviously I couldn't see the pro class or anything, but having watched the stream back, it was really close and fair racing. And I think, was it 30 odd minutes in, there was still 3 seconds between first and sixth.
Yes, that close.
Yeah, it was incredible to watch. If anyone hasn't watched it, that's watching this now, go on our YouTube or Paul's Twitch or our Facebook and find the stream and watch that race. That was brilliant last week.
Oh, most definitely. But coming from the brilliance of last week to the brilliance of now, we're going to ride on board for the final lap because I don't think there's going to be any more battles. Let's ride on board with Tom Mount as he takes us around for the final lap of this circuit and tries to bring home what has been a phenomenal race all the way through. So as he comes across that timing line, he goes on to one last tour of the Nurburgring circuit, and I think he will be trying now to target that 8:13 to get the fastest lap and bring it home and say that he's taken everything from this one. As he makes his way out of turns 1 and 2 here, and Grostad just sets an 8:12.7.
Wow.
Well, I think that might have just taken a little bit of wind out of the sails there of Tom Mantle as we just see Grostad coming across the line right now, and that is absolutely phenomenal. But meanwhile, then jumping back on board here with Tom Mantle, can he respond to that? That is the big question right now. He's already gone purple in Sector 1. But to be fair, he's got a lot of sectors to go through before this lap is done, so we'll have to wait and see as Blomqvist is into the pits. So I don't think we're going to be getting just a peaceful lap of Ryan on board with Mal here, as we are seeing some last bit pit stops. Blomqvist into the pits to take on fuel, I presume, here. And that does promote Gareth Williams up into P5 at the last hour.
Yeah, quite astonishing how many people have misjudged the fuel and stuff. But to be fair, who am I to talk? I ran out of fuel on the last lap with 5 corners to go last week. I did a Timo Glock.
Indeed, is that Glock style moment?
Yes, to say I was angry at myself was an understatement for 2 litres of fuel.
Oh dear, but at least you won't be making that mistake again in the season.
No, to be fair, when me and Billy did some practicing last Thursday, he did have a couple of quick words with me about it, so I don't think it will happen again.
And well, meanwhile, from your race coming to a stop last week to something coming to a stop, we've got Rick Jansen, who's just literally parked on the exit there of Track and Field Rex, and he's not moving at all. I think that car has retired from the race, or something's gone very wrong, because Jansen is just parked up and he's not moving. He's not jumped back to the pits right now. I would presume he's run out of fuel.
I was just about to check that, to be honest. Just sat on board with him now. Yeah, he's run out of fuel.
That is very unfortunate for Jansen, who was doing very well there to be running in what was at the time P10 and last of our top 10 positions, but now his race has come to an abrupt halt and literally with only 1 lap of racing to go, as meanwhile Tom Mao now makes his way up towards Ehrenberg, and as he does so he's got Grostad, who is trying to chase after him, and Grostad is going even faster this time around. Well, so far he's gone a bit faster, but we'll wait and see as they come to the end of the current lap they're on, and whether Grostad can lower that bar, raise that bar, I should say, from an 8:12.7 to something even higher. But I think Grostad right now, if he is definitely going with that McLaren, I think he is going to be giving everybody a run for their money in that machine, because this is pace, and he is showing it right now.
It's going to be one close championship come the end of the season. I think it's going to be down to the little mistakes and stuff like that, miscalculating fuel and everything else.
Oh, definitely. I think it's all those little mistakes that will add up, and the championship it's a marathon, not a sprint, as you were saying earlier, with these races plus the whole championship. And I think everybody's going to be starting to condition themselves for that, because over the course of 12 rounds with only 1 drop score, it is going to be a long campaign.
Yeah, and especially with the 2 double points races in the middle as well, in the middle and end as well.
Indeed, and speaking of long campaigns, meanwhile, Iceland Hereford here for Full Sim Racing in P3. He's fallen back to 11.5 seconds off the back of Rustad, but he's been putting in a solid set of laps, 8.16s across the board for the last 3 laps. And as he makes his way now all the way through the double left-hand sequence here, I think the Norwegian as well will be thinking ahead to the season ahead. And the one thing that was most noticeable about Hereford over the course of season 1, he wasn't the fastest, but he was consistently quick. He was able just to keep extracting lap after lap against the certain time, and if anything, it reminded me of watching the days of when I used to watch Michael Schumacher in Formula 1. It's almost as if he's been told a lap time and he's going to get it in his head, and now that lap time, lap after lap after lap, and I think the Norwegian could be looking quite strong in terms of a bit of an outlier within this class.
Yeah, because you don't need to win every race. I think it was Hereford last season that was always third, fourth, the occasional second. And I think he finished 4th overall in the standings and wasn't a million miles away from Harry Melvin, who finished 3rd.
Oh, definitely, and be fair to his credit, Melvin put on a fantastic display over the course of the season, and it was the case it was a very deserved P3 from Harry Melvin, and really was the best of the rest outside of the Luxem battle between Caruana and Fletcher, and then Hereford to pick up P4 was no mean feat. It was an achievement from him.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, it just shows, though, you don't have to win every race to be quite high up in the table.
True. And meanwhile, looking a little bit further down the table, he's up into P11. It is Gareth Mills who, after coming past Rick Janssen, who of course was parked up, and I think Janssen has actually got that, well, he's got that Porsche restarted as Janssen. He's got it going once again here, so perhaps he just had he decided to park up. Perhaps something went wrong with the equipment. He's very gradually coasting around the circuit right now, but he has got the car going once again.
Yeah, quite possibly. When I watched that on board, it looked like he'd lost fuel, to be honest.
Perhaps he decided to get out the car and speak to other marshals. Perhaps they had a spare emergency fuel tank on the side, as he goes a bit wide there. And as a result, gets the car back together, but it does look as though Jansen's now just trying to get that car to the finish line as he makes his way down through at Flensgarden Eins, and as he makes his way on down. Meanwhile, we look back towards our leader, and it is Tom Mao right now who is bringing this race to a close. He hasn't got long to go. He's now in the downhill run. 17 seconds is his advantage over Grubstad. He's pushing it, Ismail, but as he almost goes wide then, it almost shows a sign of making a mistake, which I don't think he's allowed to make mistakes given the pace he's shown.
No, I mean, I've been sat on board with him for the past minute or two, and how smooth he is in this car is something to understand and watch, and nothing but I'm trying to think of the word for this. I'm in awe of it because with the bumps and everything you have with the simulator, and having to be able to be that smooth and keeping it that smooth is a form of art, in my opinion. I mean, I can't physically do it that well, and here's someone who is allowing us to see it all in front of us, if you know what I mean.
Oh, definitely. It is a thing of beauty, and now with only a limited number of corners to go here, he goes to the kind of carousel, and it just looks so planted. It's almost as if man and virtual machine are in rhythm, and as he comes through onto the dot in Ahoa now, it's going to be the case that he hasn't got long to go here. I think he might be starting to think now the win's almost there. I think it might be a case of he's salivating at the prospect of taking the win at a circuit which has claimed so many drivers. We are down to only 13 drivers remain. That's how big our rate of attrition is. Only one long straight and 2 more corners to go.
Yeah, and is this his statement of intent for the Pro Class next season?
I think it is, and I think now he's going to be bringing it home, and we'll bring it home with him as he makes his way down the Dotanoa into left-hand kink right now. Not long to go here. This is going to be his final lap, his 15th tour of the circuit over the course of 2 hours, and as he now makes his way into the final heavy braking zone, the right into left here just keeps it nice and smooth, doesn't need to do anything special right now, and as he makes his way out the final corner, it will be Tom Mail who takes the win in pre-season test event number 2 of the GT3 Championship, as he crosses the line there with a phenomenal drive, and that final lap, an 8:11.676. That is absolutely astounding if that is registered on the time board, which I think it is. But meanwhile, it is the case that Hakon Gristad comes home in P2. in the McLaren MP4 12 seating, and one would wonder, what if he hadn't made some of the mistakes he did earlier on in the race? Would he have potentially had a shot at taking on Tom Mell? We can only dream as we go into the season. And then Øystein Hereford will come home in P3, completing the podium in another brilliantly consistent drive from the Norwegian as he crosses that timing line. And then it is going to be Matthew Prouting in the end, who the Pro-Am driver, as he makes his way out the final corner with a slight twitch, is going to finish the best of the rest outside of the podium with a strong drive in the end, for keeping it smart, keeping it simple, and he just about holds off Gareth Williams in the end, who comes home in P5. A great drive from the two BMW drivers, and it's Blomqvist who is going to come home in P6 with that final pit stop, which cost him some time, and it wasn't to be the perfect race from our Swedish driver as he makes his way into the final two corners right now, keeps it nicely tucked together as he flows on through, and as he makes his way out of the final corner right now. It has been a good drive from the number 186 car, and he'll be looking upwards and onwards to the final pre-season test event and the season ahead as he comes home in P6. And then we are going to have Jeremy de Boven here, who makes his way onto the dot in her right now. We have a good amount of time before he makes his way onto that start-finish straight, but to be fair to de Boven, the Belgian driver, can you fault him? He's always the one to put in these strong performances, and once again he's just kept his head down and got on with it, and now he's only got 2 more corners to go.
Yeah, he's another one of these that's really consistent on his lap times. He's rarely more than a second a lap inconsistent. He does really well as well. Has his moments, everybody does, but yeah, pleasure to drive against and race against.
Oh, most definitely, and I think the pleasure's all his now as he makes his way for the final 2 corners. He will come home in P7 in the end. Whilst his son wasn't able to make the full distance, it will be the case that the father does, and as he crosses the line there, he weaves from side to side, celebrating the Audi R8. And I definitely think if he's planning to go with the R8 this season, he may have picked a car that suits his driving style, because it does look very composed, and we're a little bit more fine-tuned in the final pre-season test. I think we could be seeing a good contend force with regards to battling for position over the course of the season. But meanwhile, our P8 driver, Jean-Louis Deschamps, who's had a few moments today, it hasn't been all smooth sailing as he makes his way down Dottenhauer right now. He will be the first of our Porsche drivers to finish this race. A lot of our Porsches having a very difficult day at the office, as we are hearing that Janssen has had another run off the circuit. I think Janssen's had an absolute nightmare coming down into Arenberg Corner and has just rejoined in P13. But meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps making his way now down into the final 2 corners here. But we do have the Porsche contingent who seems to be a bit further down the field. Jean-Louis Deschamps ahead of them as he makes his way into the final 2 corners. He comes on through, and it will be the case that Porsche, I think, which has had a bit of damage to the suspension over the course of the race, bounced it everywhere, comes across the line in the end in P8, and I think Deschamps will be grateful to see that checkered flag. It's been a difficult one, and now we've got the best part of 1.5 minutes until we get to Paul Williams, who's just coming down Flansgardens Via. But whilst we're waiting for our P9 driver, Matt, who's been your driver of the day?
My driver of the day, it's a difficult one to be honest, because Tom Mayle was outstanding start to finish in that race. He led basically every lap, didn't he? But 2 or 3 when Grebstad and Kjærgaard came through when Mayle took his second stop. But at the same time, I think I want to give it to Grebstad because of starting 21st. Setting the lap times he did and finishing second is just, that's an incredible feat to me.
Oh, most definitely. And I think I'd have to agree with you there. Tom Mayle has definitely set the standard high in terms of that consistency of the race. But Gribstad, to have started P21, had the spin at YouTube corner as well, or the corner that seems to have claimed everybody today, and then to bring it back and come home in the end only 17.5 seconds off of Tom Mayle is a phenomenal performance. And really, I think the two of them, if they could share the award, they both get it for different themes. But right now, it's one of those cases that as they are probably absolutely enjoying and reveling in their achievements, it's going to be Paul Williams who now comes through the final 2 corners here to take a P9, which a very nice drive here, and his debut in the pre-season for this series comes across the line, does the Britain in number 107, a great drive to P9, and then we have got a further now 1.5 minutes to go until we get to Didi Vlaming, who by the looks of things seems to have compressed the rear of that Audi R8 quite a bit, and I think he's really struggling to get the car home at this point.
Sorry, it's just that, yeah, the rear wing looks twisted, so he's not going to have a lot of rear end downforce, so he's not going to have the pace coming out the corners like Hereford has, or Jeremy de Bova. But, who's been the fans' driver of the day then? Of everyone that, while we've got the time, whoever's watching, put in the comments who you think was quickest. Sorry, quickest. The best driver in your opinion.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'll let you know what everyone's got to say. And a comment from Elvit80 Sykes earlier. Well done to the guys that managed to stick it out. Matt and Paul, that was really great, gents. Excitement building up indeed. It is really building up, Elwin. I cannot wait for the official season right now. But we do have to wait just a little bit longer to get to the official season, and our waiting, of course, continues because we must welcome home our remaining drivers here because they are all on the lead lap. It would not be fair to leave them by the wayside. So we can see Vlamink here doing a little bit weaving down the dot in the hole. I think he can see the enders in sight right now. There might be a few swear words underneath that virtual helmet in terms of, can I just see the end please, as that Audi has been through the wars. Oh goodness me, but at least he's bringing it home and it will be a top 10 for him.
Yeah, well, he's not had the best of days, but he's done the main thing at the end of it all, which is bring the car home and finish on the lead lap.
Oh, most definitely. As he comes out the final corner, then it will be a P10 for DD Vlamink. The Belgian doing the best he could despite the damage he picked up on the car early on, but he brings it home in a good drive from Vlamink. And then it will be Gareth Mills, who is, I think he may have run out of fuel because he's very gradually cruising and having to park the car up here. I think Mills has run out of fuel.
Yeah, I think he has though, myself.
And then we do... Go on.
As I say, unless he's having hardware issues like Janssen did.
Oh, Janssen did have a number of issues, but where Mills has fallen by the wayside, it does mean that the Mr. Sparkle machine of Stephen... sorry, not Stephen Holman. I don't know why I keep calling him Stephen. Sam Holman is going away around through the Clio carousel, and it will be the rather brightly coloured Porsche 991 that is going to come home in the end in what is going to be a P11, unless he suddenly has some fuel issues. I mean, say it's not so. That would be a shock for sore eyes if it is. I mean, our final three are all trying to make the way to the end. I'm hearing that Rick Janssen's having multiple offs as well.
I was about to say, so I'm not going to count Holman out for P11. Oh, no, yeah, because Mills was ahead of Janssen at the start of the lap, so Holman's got past them both.
He has indeed, and he's just charging his way down, dotting the hard, doing a little bit of weaving along there. I think he might be aware that the cameras are on him, and it's a little bit of a quiet end, but it's good to see Holman enjoying himself, and now he's only got 2 more corners to go after the left-hand kink here. And we can see there in the Twitch chat, Craig Pierce saying Grivstad is a good shout, a great drive from the start. And Angry D as well saying in the YouTube chat, Grivstad. But then again, I am his #1 fan, so I am biased. Well, I think the overall vote is from 2 people there at Grivstad. So I think that's the fans' drivers' vote of the day.
Yeah, it'd be unfair not to give it to him, to be honest.
Indeed, as we see there, Holman taking home in the end the P11. A great drive from Holman. It's been up and down, but he's finally found his way to the finish line, and he parks the car up. And then last but not least, I think it is going to be Janssen in the end with a Porsche, which I think there is major steering damage on that car because it's pointing in one direction, but it's turning in another one. And I think it's the case of just survival of the cars as they make their way home. But, well, for Janssen, I think he's just trying to get home right now.
Yeah, certainly crabbing down the road a bit. That you can see how the front wheels are going one way, the rear wheels are going a different way.
Oh goodness me! I must admit, I'm having to resist the urge to laugh, not because of Janssen. I must apologise, ladies and gentlemen, but because seeing a car drive straight, but the front of the car's pointing a completely different way. That is a car that has had a very bad day at the office, I must say.
Yeah, but I must admit, he's doing really, really well to keep it going, and because it'll be wanting to twist and turn and go left and right, and you're just constantly fighting with the steering wheel and taking it at speed like he is as well. Every credit to him.
Oh, definitely indeed. As we hear, Gareth Mills has had to retire, so he will be classified as finishing P13 and on the final lap as well, so he will be given the classification of making it to the end. And then it will be Janssen who in the end comes home, the final person to take the checker flag in P12. And in the end for Janssen, a very, very challenging race, but he brings it home in the end, survives to the finish. Well, what an absolutely fantastic race. And before we come to a conclusion, there's just time for a quick word from our sponsor. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, then why not check us out at our official Next Gen Racing website. That's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our Next Gen Racing Facebook group. That is facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also, a huge thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible, and that's Apex Racing Academy, apexracingac.com. We're very appreciative for them being on board, and they're going to be with us throughout the season. And I should also say a big thank you to my co-commentator, Matt Emmons, who unfortunately his audio won't be picked up now due to a slight technical bug we've got on the stream. But it's been great to have you, Matt, join us in the commentary box today. And whilst you won't be heard, I'm very grateful to have you with us, and we look forward to having you in the commentary box once again in a week's time at what is our final pre-season test event. And in terms of that next time, ladies and gentlemen, that will be on Wednesday the 10th of November 2021, and that is at the Japanese Suzuka circuit, if I can get my sibilants correct. A fantastic circuit, one that will push our drivers to the absolute limit in terms of knowing their cars in and out. And before we get to closing things off, I should also take a brief moment to say, if you've been watching tonight and you are interested, you're an iRacer, an avid iRacer, you don't have to be the best, you can be a rookie, you can be an amateur, a pro-amateur, or a pro. Sign-ups are still open for Season 2. We've got such popular demand that we are fielding a second lobby. It's not a second split, I should clarify. It's a second entire lobby with its own pros, pro-ams and ams, and we are expecting there to be a fully packed grid. We've already got 60 drivers in Lobby 1, and in Lobby 2 we are making our way very quickly to 60 drivers there as well. So if you are interested, do get in touch with us at Next Gen Racing, whether it be on our Facebook group or our official website. Alternatively, drop us a comment on the official Next Gen Racing Facebook group or YouTube channel, because it's for a £20 entry fee. That is the equivalent of what is, if I do some very quick maths, that is 22 races. So in the end, it is effectively less than £3 a race. There are plenty of prizes up for grabs as well, and trophies up for grabs, but more importantly, the opportunity to, on a weekly basis, race amongst very like-minded individuals who all want fair racing. And in terms of our calendar, you can see it here, 12 rounds, which are spread over the course of the rest of 2021 going into 2022. We, of course, skip Christmas because we're nice like that. We're not Grinches at Next Gen Racing, and it is the situation where we're going to be going to plenty of fantastic circuits, whether they be in the United States, in Europe, alternatively going into the Asia Pacific region and concluding with Bathurst in round number 12. So if you're interested, be sure to let us know and sign up today, reserve your space. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, before Wednesday the 10th of November 2021 for the final pre-season test, remember to stay on track. Good night.